Hi, Lori. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, thank you. I've chased the other in-person attendees to other meeting rooms because we still have issues in the boardroom with the audio. So video is live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the special board meeting for February 24th, 2022. First, I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples. And also, following up on our pink shirt yesterday, it's a sad day for the people of the world, but especially for the people of Ukraine. So I just have them in my thoughts right now. It's really devastating. And also like to welcome our alternate directors, which we have quite a few. Alternate Director Justice, Alternate Director Sowry, and Alternate Director McNeil is here as well. And soon to join us as Alternate Director Sandu. So with that, we will start with an approval of the agenda. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item is approval of the agenda. I have no additions.
Okay, I had a mover, Director Kuhn. Is there a seconder? Director Smith, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Any public input, Ms. Legault? Oh, go ahead, Director Marsh.
Yes, Madam Chair, just in case, which probably isn't the case, but for our alternate directors, if they have a different screen, a third screen or a second screen, they might find it helpful to go into the CVRD website under finance, where they can see the breakdown of all of these items and how it will affect if it does indeed affect their area. I've always found that really helpful at budget time. So I'm not sure if they were told that when they were sent, but it's very helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead, Alternate Director McNeil. I can't hear you.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Kate. That's very helpful.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Legault.
Sorry, there's no participation for public input period today. No delegations, information items, correspondence. So we're on to committee reports, and item CR1 is the report and recommendations from the Cowichan Lake Recreation Commission meeting of December 16th, 2021.
And who will be taking this? The Cowichan Recreation Center. Go ahead, Director Morrison.
Can you hear me?
Yes, and we were moving things in blocks. If there's that's the way we were going to be doing it today. So if you want to, if there's anything that needs to be pulled, if you would like to ask the board that, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would, based on the meeting of December 16, 2021, we recommend for the budget the following are the 6 items that have been already published, and would move those.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Director Smith.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I do, through the chair, have a question to staff. With regards to the number 5 and number 6, we are looking at regional recreation in the future, possibly, and I'm just wondering if looking at the 2023, the funding in that area, does the interest and principal fall to the users on this budget? Under
Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Director Smith. So if the question's around, would the users across the region be funding this if it passed through a referendum this year? That would be my understanding.
Follow up, Director Smith, go ahead, please.
Yes, just for clarification, so the users would be paying for the principal and the interest, or just the interest involved in this? Thank you.
Mr. Elzinga.
So thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Director Smith, we are still doing some work behind the scenes with Finance and Legislative Services on definitions of short-term and long-term applicability to the regional recreation function. We anticipate that report coming to the board in May. So around this particular item, it would be my understanding that any capital investment like this that is really a replacement of existing infrastructure would be funded by the partners in regional recreation moving forward.
Director Marsh. Sorry, just a second. Is there any more follow-up, Director Smith? Okay, thank you. I turn to Director Marsh.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the same topic, and that is my understanding as well, Mr. Elzinga, from all those hours and hours of meetings.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you so much. We will move on to CR2. And I turn to Director Salmon, and I just want to inform you, I think alternate Director McNeil would like to pull something. So I will leave that to her, but I will let you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the report and recommendations of the Special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of January 13th, 2022. There are numerous here. We will go in groups as we have before. So the first item is group 1, 15 items. Does anyone want to pull any of those?
I have alternate Director McNeil, go ahead, and then Director Martman, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to pull function 235. Please.
235 is number 5 on our agenda. Okay, that one is pulled. Go ahead.
And number 356. Maybe that's too soon.
Too soon.
Too soon. Okay.
Yes. Director Martman.
I'd like to pull number 8, which is function 238, please.
Oh, I have Director Acton. Or Director Wilson first, and then Director Acton.
I'll defer to Director Acton.
Go ahead, Director Acton.
I'd like to pull 232, please.
Director Wilson.
Yeah, I just had some questions on 232, Madam Chair, but as Director Acton has pulled it, then we can leave that. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Director Salmon. Hopefully you've got those.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so if I have this right, it's items 2, 5, and 8. Okay, so I'd like to move all the other items 1 through 15 except for numbers 2, 5, and 8, please.
It's been moved and seconded. And I call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Number 5. Director Salmon. I think you go back to number 5.
Okay, yeah, I think number 2 was first.
Oh, 2. Yes, sorry.
So that would be Director Acton. I'll turn it to you, Madam Chair, for this second. Okay.
Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a motion that is as follows, that the 2022 draft budget for function 232 Community Parks Area B be amended by 1, increasing requisition by 11,300, 2, increasing minor capital by 11,300, and that the 2022 draft budget for function 232 Community Parks Area B as amended be approved.
That's been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Okay, is there any question for that one? Go ahead, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, look, please be assured, I have no intention of wish to interfere here, but I have some real problems with the funding that's going on here. Could I just ask Finance perhaps to clarify, is this the funding for that's going on here purely up to Area B? There is no financial ramifications for the other areas? And I have another follow-up question there as well, please.
Ms. Weiner?
Point of order, are we talking about the amendment or point of order?
We're talking about 232. Yes, we are.
The amendment?
The amendment, yes, because I think it has to do with, correct me, Director Acton, is that to do with the funding?
It's the Area B regular parks budget that's funded in Area B only.
Okay. So I'm not sure this has anything to do.
This increase simply puts our parks budget at a 3% increase
Madam
from
Chair,
last year.
yeah,
Thank
my understanding is that we're talking about 232 as amended, but 232 is still included here.
Point of order.
Go ahead, Director Martman.
I believe the amendment has been made and seconded. Would we not vote on the amendment and then vote on and then talk about the 232?
I guess Ms.
Ms.
Legault.
Legault.
Just for clarification, item 1.2, as printed in the agenda, was not on the floor as a motion. It was moved as with the revised wording provided by Director Acton. So it is a main motion, not an amendment.
It's a main motion, and I believe that Director Smith seconded that motion. Did you not, Director Smith? Oh, Director Marsh, yes, yes. So that was on the floor.
So now I'm still confused.
So there is a motion on the floor there is a motion on the floor for 232 to put their community parks budget for Shawnigan Area B up to 3%. That's what the motion is. So
Okay.
we're going to vote on that. I'm going to call the question.
Excuse me, can we please have it reread in its totally? Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That the 2022 draft budget for Function 232, Community Parks Area B, be amended by 1, increasing requisition by $11,300, 2, increasing minor capital by $11,300, and that the 2022 draft budget for Function 232, Community Parks Area B, as amended, be approved.
Okay. I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Madam Chair, I think Director Wilson's question is valid.
Okay.
I don't understand why he can't ask a question.
Oh,
I'd
okay.
like to hear it myself.
Well, we can't understand the question. We were trying to clarify what the question is, but maybe Ms. Weiner caught that because I didn't. Go ahead, Ms. Weiner.
Through the chair to Director Wilson, yes, everything in Function 232 comes from Area B residents. It's not from another area. It's not other areas contributing or municipalities.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Weiner. I appreciate that. Call the question, I suppose. Thank you.
All right. And I turn to Director Smith. You have a question on this motion as well?
Just for clarification, I was wondering, yesterday we heard that with regards to the Shawnigan Lake Rail Trail Phase 3, that there's an environmental and an engineering report coming forward. Is that included in this budget? Thank you.
Mr. Farquhar?
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Morning.
The project as proposed is in the budget as a supplemental, and the work that is being done is being funded under funds from the 2021 budget as previously directed by the committee and board to have that additional work done and brought forward for the committee and the board's consideration.
Thank you. I am now going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And Director Salmon, what is the next one?
Item 5.
And that is alternate director McNeil. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. To the 2022 draft budget for function 235, Community Parks Area E, be amended by increasing requisition by 24,475, increasing transfer to capital reserves by 24,475, and that the 2022 draft budget for function 235, Community Parks Area E, as amended, be approved.
That's been moved by alternate director McNeil, seconded by Director Morrison. Is there any questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. Director Acton, you have a question?
Yes, just for clarity, I don't understand what the line item is for, the increase. Is it towards a project or a certain area to be maintained?
Go ahead, Mr. Farquhar.
Madam Chair, through the Director Acton, in discussions with Director Nicholson, this is supporting the Area E Parks Trails Master Plan that advocates for putting aside funding every year towards future parkland acquisition in Area E. So that is the intention of this amendment, is to start building up the capital reserves for future park acquisitions in the electoral area, as supported by the Master Plan for Area E.
Follow up, Director Acton.
Well, thank you. I guess we will have to work on getting a line item like that ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. So, Director Salmon, what is the next one?
Next one is number 8, Madam Chair.
I believe that's Director Martman. I've got Marcotte and Martman in my head. Director Martman, go ahead, please.
I should be so honored. And thanks to the staff, Mr. Farquhar and Ms. Weiner for help with this. This to help you understand, this is about increasing the amount of money available to work on Yellow Point Park trails, which is a recommendation that came out of our area parks commission, our parks commission. So the amendment that I would like to make is that the 2022 draft budget for function 238 community parks area H be amended by increasing transfer from capital reserves by 25,000, 2, increasing capital lease improvements by 25,000, and 3, that the 2022 draft budget for function 238 community parks area H be amended, be approved.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Director Salmon, was that it for that block?
Yes, that's it for that block.
Okay, so I'll leave you to the next one.
Okay, thank you. So the next one, group 2, again, there are 15 items. Would anyone like any of those pulled? Okay, seeing none, I would then like to move all 15 items, please.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Oh, not seconded, but I did get a seconder. I had, so who, Director Marsh?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I was mistaken. I think it's in the next block that someone wanted to pull.
I had,
Pull
so
number 35, function 356. It might be helpful if you named the functions. It would be helpful for my brain.
Okay, people have been doing that, so it depends. We could do both, but we'll see how complicated this gets. We're trying to make it easier. So it has been moved and seconded. I turn to Director Kuhn, also put up his hand, and then Director Morrison. No, Director Morrison, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for process perspective, there's a lot of functions in these blocks. If we could perhaps take just pause a bit as these blocks are moved so that we can go through. I don't have any in this block, but I have some in others.
Certainly.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you for that helpful hint. Okay, so this is number 3, 1 through 9 has been moved and seconded. I will take a pause if there's any more questions, because I do tend to move quickly. All right, so all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Go ahead, Director Salmon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so we're now at number 4, which is only one. So I will read that one. It is that the 2022 draft budget for function 576 engineering services utilities be approved, and I'd like to move that, please.
Has it been seconded by alternate Director McNeil? Okay, I have a question from alternate Director McNeil.
I'm sorry, in the third group, function 250, have we finished 256? Or, sorry, function 356.
No. Yes, we have
Yeah.
Eagle Heights.
Madam Chair, the alternate director had asked for that to be pulled.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay, was it, so, Ms. Legault, we're going back. I didn't hear that one to be pulled because I waited. I hesitated and stopped for any more questions, but I don't know if myself and Director Salmon got that one. What do we do now?
So Madam Chair, what I'm going to suggest is we deal with number 4 that's currently on the floor. And when we've dealt with that, then alternate Director McNeil can introduce a new motion
Okay.
that would supersede the item
Thank you.
3.7.
Okay, so it has been moved that number 4, and is there, I clearly don't remember the seconder for that one because I think there was a question before I interrupted the seconder. So that has been moved by Director Salmon. Is there a seconder for that one? It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on number 4, the engineering services utility 576? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Back to Eagle Heights, number 356, number 7 of the block number 3. Alternate Director McNeil.
I'm sorry about that. I'm
That's
not
okay.
keeping up. Recommend that the draft 2022 budget for function 356 Eagle Heights Fire Protection be amended by raising requisition from 247,356 to 277,356. That's in order to purchase a new Skookum fire truck.
Okay, for that Skookum fire truck, you got a seconder. Okay, and then, yeah, 2 seconders, and now a question from Director Morrison. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through to staff on this one. There's, I believe the facility that this department operates out of is undergoing some study for potential replacement and the like. And I noticed that there's a significant increase to monies being laid away for I'm assuming that or other new equipment. Is this strictly going to the fire protection and the building as a fire protection facility, or is there some other dollars being squirreled away for potential other uses than fire protection?
Go ahead, Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through to Director Morrison and alternate Director McNeil. So to Director Morrison, I believe we're talking about the Eagle Heights budget, function 356, not the Satlam budget. So yeah, so I
My
think
error, sorry.
yeah, I think that takes care of that question. Through to Director McNeil. So there is a staff report later on in the agenda that has the same resolution that you've put forward, and so staff is comfortable with that resolution. I turn to Ms. Legault if it's appropriate at this time, or we address it as part of the staff report later in the agenda.
Ms. Legault, it has been moved and seconded.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So alternate Director McNeil's motion is similar to the resolution proposed by staff in the staff report later in the agenda. So staff is comfortable with alternate director McNeil making the motion at this point and would make that staff report really redundant later in the agenda.
The motion is already on the floor, so
We'll go ahead, and the other resolution will be redundant. Thank you. I turn to Director Marsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not exactly speaking directly to the motion, so I can wait, or I
Okay,
can just.
well, we'll just wait because we're going to call the question on this one. And Director Salmon?
Just for clarity, so later in the agenda, Mr. Elzinga, could I make a note of which number is that going to be then that we'll be sure to skip?
Go ahead, Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Director Salmon. So it is a staff report on the agenda. I don't have the staff report number in front of me, but we can address that as it comes up later in the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody need the resolution read out again, or I can go ahead? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thanks, Director Salmon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So apologies, Director McNeil, we might have rushed it a bit there. We'll slow down a little. So we're moving.
Just a second, I have Director Morrison waving his hand. Go ahead, Director Morrison. Can't hear you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not sure how I gapped on this section. I have two questions for staff that we may not need to make any motions, but it's in regards to 354 and 357.
Okay, so we're going back just for the discussion of 354 and 357. Go ahead, Director Morrison. And then Director Marsh is also waving her hand. Is that, Director Marsh, is it on the same thing, or you want to speak to the other ones that are going to be moved?
Actually, Madam Chair, I first want to acknowledge you for how well you're moving this forward. And I have a lot of empathy for people new to the table. I just remember my first budget year and how hard it was to follow everything when it got to this stage. So I think I believe it's possible that Director Morrison asked the question as a rhetorical one, because when a function is only allowed to do the things that it's allowed to do. And so the fire protection function, of course, could not, the 356 that Ms. McNeil pulled, Director McNeil pulled, couldn't do anything but fire protection. So it's just, I'm just concerned about my colleagues that haven't gone through one of this before, that they feel like they really had a chance to follow along.
Sure, but any of the alternate directors that have contacted me have been informed by their director on the requests. So I have been sent their requests, and so it could have been that I've moved too fast for them, but they have understand the requests, and I was sent some of them too. But I will take into advisement to slow down more. But thank you very much. And I turn to Director Morrison for his discussion on those two functions. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Director Marsh. I've been here more than a couple of weeks, and I kind of gapped out and got lost in there too. So yeah, it's a tough gig. In regards to 354, and I just raised that question, and it was semi-rhetorical, except that there is some ideas of a multi-function building in the fire hall, and my taxpayers contribute significantly to this function 354. So same question, Director, or to Mr. Elzinga, is there a specific destination for the increased funds going to the, I believe it was a capital reserve. I don't have the whole budget open in front of me on 354, and I have another question for 357 Honeymoon Bay Fire Department.
Mr. Elzinga, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to introduce Rob Schooler, our fire protection coordinator, who's on the call as well. And he may have some information as well, but I will take a shot at the question through to Director Morrison. So there was no supplemental items for this particular function of the Satlam Fire Hall. There is some money for consultants in studies in 2021 that we are transferring over to 2022 as unspent funds to allow for any sort of conversations that go forward in 2022 around this multi-use facility that you're talking about. So we've done seismic review. We haven't done the functional requirements yet for the Satlam Fire Hall, and we anticipate that work being done in 2022 through consultants, through a carryover from the 2021 budget.
Follow up, Director Morrison. We can't hear you if you're talking.
Thank you for that, Mr. Elzinga. In regards to Function 357 Honeymoon Bay, they are anticipating a minor capital purchase of decontamination, essentially a washing machine for gear. I was just informed that there was a significant increase to the estimated cost of that item to the tune of $5,000 to $7,000. I haven't had an opportunity to dig deep into the budget, but are we in a position where there's sufficient funds to be able to absorb that increase, or are we going to have to look at various alternatives or other alternatives to make that happen? I think it's an important purchase.
Go ahead, Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through to Director Morrison. So Mr. Schooler's been working diligently on that particular project. It is for gear washers in all 6 fire departments. We have a $7,300 grant per fire department for that. The tenders just came in this week at approximately $10,300. So there's a $3,000 shortfall in each of the fire departments. Mr. Schooler is looking right now at what are the alternate funding sources for that. I don't have specific information for you today. It's new. And so I can speculate that there would be funds available somewhere to make up that shortfall, but the work hasn't been done.
Follow up?
Well, unless Mr. Schooler has more to add, I'd like to ask finance a question in regard to reserves.
Go ahead, Ms. Wayne. What's your question? Ms. Wayner is there.
Through the chair to Director Morrison, you're talking function 357, and the balance is approximately 77,000 is what I was seeing available in funds, and that's not with the finalized rollover. I would caution the board not to get too far into the details for small amounts of this port. This is why we have operating reserves, and a budget amendment can be done later down the road if it's needed.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, so I turn to Director Acton. You did send something in the chat. Can you confirm that for me, please, so that I don't miss something? Director Acton?
You mean by email?
Oh, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not up yet.
Okay, because I have to. Yeah, you could.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, inform me then, or text
Yes.
it so that
I just wanted to give everyone the heads up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I turn now to Director Salmon for number 5.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is Group 5 on your agenda. There are 18 items, all to do with street lighting or critical street lighting all across the electoral areas. So if anyone would want any of those pulled.
Director Morrison.
I just have a question about some of the information in the headers in our budget material, and so I may not need to pull anything. I just wanted to ask a question as the presentation of material.
To who?
Well, maybe I could pose the question and staff can decide who wants to address it. I believe all of at least a number of my systems, I think Honeymoon Bay and Missachi Lake, have both been swapped out to LED from the high pressure sodium vapor lights, and so there should be cost savings in that. So I'm just curious, the headers in the budget are still referring to the old technology, and is there anticipated to be savings from an operational perspective with the new technology in place? And I see Mr. Dennison has jumped
Okay,
in.
Mr. Dennison, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, there will be savings. In some cases, we had to pay for the cost. And we had to run that through a couple budgets, and then you'll see the savings kicking in afterwards. So the intent, very much so, is we'll see long-term savings on these functions, but it takes a bit to pay out and recover from the initial investment. But it's worth the investment.
Okay, is there a follow-up, Director Morrison?
Oh, that's good, thanks.
And Director Salmon, you had a question on the streetlights too, or?
Yeah, please, just since Mr.
Go
Dennison
ahead.
is here. Thank you. Is there a difference between street lighting and critical street lighting?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may, so critical streetlights are particular one-off locations that have been identified in the community generally for safety reasons. So it may be that school children in the morning are crossing a particular section of road to get to school, or people are going to their mailboxes or things of that nature. And so a request comes in, we run that through. Each critical street lighting service is based on the electoral area, and it's a single light that's looked after by highways, or by
Hydro.
BC Hydro, and we just pay the cost for that street light. Other ones that are just called generally street lighting are services that are in a given area. Usually we get them from a new development, and they're usually ornamental. So they're specialized in some way. BC Hydro won't look after them. We look after the streetlights themselves, as well as the hydro cost for them. And then there's some areas like Yubo and Honeymoon Bay where we've inherited a broader streetlight service there as well.
Thank you.
Okay, and so we have not, can help me out here, Director
Okay,
Salmon.
thank you. So I'd like to move then, seeing none others pulled, items 1 through 18.
That's been moved and seconded by Director Kuhn. I'm going to wait a minute, hold my hands down, tape over my mouth. Okay, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you so much. Carry on, Director Salmon.
Thank you. So we will now move to the block 6 on your agenda. There are 9 items, function 701 and following. They're all to do with drainage. Does anyone want any of those pulled?
Not seeing any hands up. Is there a seconder for that? Been moved and seconded. Okay, we're looking at, so this is number 6. This is drainage functions for electoral areas. And I call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Carry on,
Madam Chair.
Director Salmon.
Yes, well, thank you. So we will now move to block number 7 on your agenda. There are 23 items. These are all to do with water systems across the electoral areas, starting with function 601 and subsequent. Anyone like any of these 23 items pulled?
Director Morrison.
620, please.
620 is number 14 is being pulled. So there is 1 to 23, and there's 1 pulled so far. Not seeing any other hands. Director Acton, go ahead, please. Go ahead, Director Acton.
Sorry, so I'm fumbling here. 250, please.
250 is not on there.
How can we be?
Function 250.
Sorry. Okay. I
This
thought I
is-
missed it. Okay, water
Okay,
systems. Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we still
Thank
clear?
you. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't hear an introduction to the type of function, so I didn't want to miss it. Thank you.
Okay, so this is all the water systems in electoral areas. And I call the question, all in favor. Just a sec, let me clearly see if I had a seconder. Ms. Legault?
So just to be clear, Madam Chair, so I don't know if I've even moved. I will move all the items except for number 14.
Thank you. And there is a seconder. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Now number 14, Director Salmon.
I think that's Director Morrison.
Director Morrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question through to staff. This is another one of those that we've received updated information. There's our Mr. Etherington. So I'm looking at budget preparation sheets that are, I guess, stale dated now. Have we got? I see we were carrying over the capital expenditure costs and the likes for the new water tank, and we just got the updated costs. Are we in a position where there is sufficient funds in the budget that has been presented and approved at committee, or is there still additional funding required for completion of that project?
Mr. Etherington, or is it?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we discussed with you the reallocation of funds from the sewer budget in order to accommodate the extra cost of almost $150,000 for the tank. So that is approved, and the other funds are still there with the works that we did with Mosaic and such for access to the tank site.
Just a reminder, Madam Chair, we have an item later in the agenda in which we move some $150,000 from gas tax to Missachi Lake Water to take care of that.
Okay, thank you. Is that clear, Director Morrison?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, are you moving number 14?
I will.
Okay, it's been moved. So moved and seconded. Okay, I'm going to call the question on number 14. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you, Director Salmon. Carrying on.
Thank you. So we now move to Group 8 on your agenda, which is sewer systems all across the electoral areas, in the Function 800 series. So there are 16 items under sewer systems. Would anyone want one pulled?
So this is sewer systems, and so Director Salmon, I don't see any hands. Are you moving that?
Yeah, I'd like to move items 1 through 16, please.
And it's been seconded by Director Staples. I'm going to wait a minute. This is sewer systems in electoral areas. Seeing no hands up. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you. Number 9.
Thank you. So moving to Group 9 on your agenda, there are 21 items, all to do with recreation. So anyone like any of those pulled? I'll wait a moment to go through.
Not seeing any hands. Go ahead and move that.
Okay, so I'd like to move items 1 through 21, please.
Moved and seconded. Wait a minute. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you. Off to number 10, Director Salmon.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the final one in Group 10. It's all grab bag different supplementals. There are 39 of them. So I think what we did in committee and what we should do now is group them in groups of 10. So we'll just look at items 1 through 10 for the moment.
Okay, so you're moving 1 through 10, and I see Director Acton. And welcome, Director Sandhu, alternate Director Sandhu, and Director Acton, 1 through 10. Is there a question on that? Go ahead.
I'd like to pull number 2, please.
Okay.
And I would like to pull number 6 myself. Any others? 1 through 10.
So it's 1 through 10, but not 2 and 6.
That's right.
And did I have a seconder for that? I think I did, Director Smith. Okay, or Ann Staples. Okay. Calling the question. It's just for alternate Director Sandhu that has just come in. We are on number 10 in the Electoral Area Services Special Committee reports. And we're moving along in blocks, and we are going through 1 through 10 in this block because there happens to be 32 items. So we're moving 10 at a time. And with this, people are pulling, And 1 through 10, we had pulled number 2 and number 6. So we will be voting on 1 through 10, but not 2 and 6.
Okay.
All righty. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. And now we turn to number 2, Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My motion is as follows, that it be recommended to the board that the 2021 surplus funds for community information, volunteer appreciation, and FCM expenditures line items in function 250 be carried forward to 2022 so that directors can properly participate in their business now that restrictions have lifted.
So that has been moved by Director Acton and seconded by Director Morrison. Are there any questions on that? I turn to Director Smith and then Director Stone. Director Smith, go ahead, please.
Thank you. The volunteer appreciation, I have a question for staff with regards to the volunteer appreciation moving into the next year. It was my understanding in the past that you could move it 1 year, which we made an exception last year to move it in from 2020 into the 2021 budget. And if we move it now from that into the 2022 budget, I remember in the past we weren't allowed to do it more than once.
Welcome, Ms. Nielsen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to Director Smith, yes, that is the case. Is my understanding through finance. The tracking of this work on individual directors or their expenses is actually a significant amount of work that's not possible, really. So it's the 1 year was certainly forgiven. Done, but the second year is tracking back for 2 years is not going to be a possibility.
Director Acton, follow-up question for Ms. Nielsen.
Well, due to COVID, it would be nice to have an exemption. This is just simply a policy, or, we haven't been able to participate with our volunteers and acknowledge them properly. And our terms are ending, so it's nice to have that opportunity. I know just for Area B, we had a Christmas function planned, but then restrictions got stronger, and so that a lot of people were not comfortable participating. So to be able to carry it forward, I'd like to be able to see that happen.
I
so
think
would that not be up to the board or to finance or anyway?
I'll turn to Director Smith and then I'll go back to Ms. Nielsen. Go ahead, Director Smith. Oh,
Yes.
sorry, Director Stone. Let me get to Director Stone first because I apologize.
Oh, that's fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. It was just that the motion started with it that it be recommended to the board, and this is a board meeting, so that wasn't necessary. It's just a point of process.
Okay, thank you. Director Smith.
Thank you. I would just like to indicate that we had to be flexible in the last 2 years of how we did bring forward our appreciation to our community. And I was able to purchase gift cards for local restaurants, and I made that an opportunity for them to have appreciation in the actual year that they were struggling along with the rest of us. And so I do know that, the parties weren't allowed, but, we had other options available. And I did spend mine with appreciation through gift cards. Thank you.
Thank you. And did you have another, Ms. Nielsen, is there anything else that you need to answer here? I just also had a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to the committee, to the board, there is board resolution that it was $1,200 a year. With respect to moving forward, I'm going to defer to Ms. Werner to help with that because the resolution is at $1,200 a year per director.
Thank you, Ms. Weiner.
Through the chair to Director Acton, actually, this is on a couple of points. Community information is not tracked by area. So if there was a rollover, it would just be a rollover of amount because it's a significant amount of work to track for 9 individual electoral areas, what they spend for what community information. And the same actually goes for the volunteer appreciation to track the amount, which is $1,200 per EA director. Staff will have to do that on a separate Excel spreadsheet, track the amounts to roll over and keep track of that. It's not done within, and it's not in our GL system as the amounts are so low. So it does take a significant amount of work to do. The same would go for the FCM, for who's attending and who's not. And I think there was a decision that not everybody necessarily would be attending. So there was a cut on that.
Okay, I just wanted to insert myself here, and then I'll go back to you, Director Acton. I as well had to be creative with my community appreciation and did the same thing. I had local businesses, local restaurants, and local stores that I actually took off from Director Smith, who had done it in the previous year, to give to my residents that do all the volunteers business for us throughout the year. So that's how I creatively had to come up with a solution. So I appreciate that it has been difficult. And I turn to Director Acton.
Yeah, I appreciate that it's been a challenge too. And I'm fine with dropping the volunteer appreciation. The 1,200 should be fine. I just know in the past, everyone has 1,200, but Area B has a significant number of more volunteers. But we will make do with what we have. We could have, just a hot dog barbecue thing or something. But I would like to see the other 2 line items move forward since they are not a big challenge for staff to. And as for FCM, those are just policy or those are just suggestions, perhaps since we haven't been able to participate in conferences and seminars in the last couple of years, perhaps we just have that flexibility. If there's one person who wants to attend and they're the one being left out, perhaps we could be flexible at this time.
I think we had a resolution on FCM for 4 people or 3 people. I forget at committee what we had talked about, but I turn to Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great that different directors have employed different ways of appreciating their volunteers. I had a dinner that is looked forward to by so many of my volunteers that, and it was literally canceled 48 hours before the event due to increasing COVID restrictions. I'm supportive of the resolution, and I'm not sure why it's proving to be so challenging in the past when there's been a policy or resolution on the books, and COVID's been extraordinary. So I would be supportive of the resolution as it is. I would like to have a social event where my volunteers can interact, and I also support some of the other comments that Director Acton has made around conferences and the like. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
I think that staff has just told us the complications on this and how much staff work that takes. And Director Acton said she was removing I'm not sure on your resolution now, Director Acton, because you said you were removing the volunteer part of it. Could you reread your resolution so we can be clear?
Sure, I'll reread it without that in there. So that is recommended it is recommended that the 2021 surplus funds from community information and FCM expenditure line items in function 250 be carried forward to 2022. Well, actually, so Madam Chair, okay. so that directors can properly participate in their business now that restrictions have lifted.
That's your resolution. And was the previous one seconded, Ms. Legault?
That's what I was wondering.
But, okay, was it seconded by Director Morrison? Yes, of course. Okay, so now it has changed. Ms. Legault, can you help me with this?
So normally we would have a motion to amend the main motion.
Okay, so
To delete the phrase volunteer appreciation.
Well, Madam, maybe we should vote on it. Is it really such a big deal? I don't actually.
Well, I was hearing from staff that it is actually. It's quite
Well, if there's
complicated
just
for
a
them.
few people who want to use it because they weren't able to, and mine myself was actually partially canceled as well. So I don't know. It seems like a real nitpicky kind of thing when we should all be willing to acknowledge our volunteers. And
Yeah, I acknowledge volunteers and I also acknowledge staff. Ms. Weiner, would you like to speak or are you just on this? Go ahead.
I was just going to make a recommendation that the surplus balances from FCM and the public consultation be come forward into the 2022 budget is what I was looking at as a recommendation on that.
So that is a clearer recommendation than, is that a clearer recommendation than what Director Acton? That is clearer for me, easier for staff. But we currently have this one on the floor. Or does that make any difference, Ms. Legault, if we change the wording? I'm looking to Director Acton, who's fading in the dark here. Yeah.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
We have a resolution on the floor, and I think what Ms. Weiner said would be a perfect subsequent resolution to provide clarity to this issue.
That's what I was asking. Okay, so Ms. Weiner, could you repeat that? Is that okay, Director Acton? That's just a clearer.
I was recommending that the surplus, however, I wasn't including the volunteer appreciation at this point. I was only including the community community information and the FCM. So the surplus balances for the community information and FCM be carried forward into the 2022 budget.
Is that all right, Director Acton? That's clear for staff. Okay, so Director Smith.
So I have a question for staff. When we were going over function 250, as directors, we decided how many directors would be going to each of to FCM, and I can't remember, and I think that we put enough funds aside for that. If we roll over the FCM funds into the FCM line, are we now increasing the amount of directors that can go to FCM, or is it just amount of money that's actually going into the budget?
Ms. Weiner or Ms. Nielsen? Oh, Ms. Weiner, one or the other. Two popped up.
I will defer to Ms. Nelson.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I am going to need to look back to see what the final resolution was, but looking at the numbers, I am going to suggest that it was 3 directors, but I will need to confirm that. I'll do that right now.
Thank you. I think that was correct. Somehow I said 4, but I think it was 3 that we had said was 4. Director Morrison says 4. Okay. Well, we'll figure that out. Okay. So is this, and everybody votes on this, correct, Ms. Legault?
Madam Chair, we're at the board. This is a budget, so everybody votes on it.
Okay. All righty. Okay. So we are clear on what Ms. Weiner said. Does anything need to be repeated? No other hands up. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Director Acton.
Yes. Would it be possible to make a motion for the discussion of how many directors goes to FCM come back to the board so that we can discuss it in light of this being final year for this board?
I'm sure we can. We'll clarify and clear that up.
And bring it up in discussion at the board. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Okay. Back to you, Director Salmon.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So, yeah, I wanted to discuss a little bit number 6, which is a utility vehicle replacement. Just my question to staff is about, and this will apply. Actually, we have 4 vehicle replacements in our budget agenda today. This one's engineering, then we have a parks one later, and we also have a Bings Creek one and an emergency services one. But I asked about this last time, and I've since checked, and it is right there in our strategic plan that the CVRD will transition to an electric fleet. So I know I was assured that this would happen when possible, but my question is, and this is particularly because now the financial case, aside from the emissions, the financial case over the lifetime, it looks like you save money because of the reduced maintenance of fuel. So, but they cost a little more initially. The question is, do we have wiggle room if need be to move toward that strategic plan objective if the initial cost is a little higher?
I see that we have 3 staff members. I'll turn to our CAO. Mr. Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll let my other staff weigh in if necessary, but we don't have a formal fleet electrification strategy. However, we do have across the organization an impetus to look at electric vehicles wherever possible. We have invested in additional charging stations at the Ingram Street building in anticipation of particularly with the passenger vehicles to have an entire electric fleet. At some point, I think the challenge comes when we're talking about some of our specialty vehicles in terms of availability and costs there. And I see Mr. Boysen. I'll defer to Mr. Boysen for any details in that regard.
Welcome, Mr. Boysen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just like to add that we're going to be exploring electric vehicles. Having one myself is something I always keep asking my staff about. It's something that I think the trucks is really the issue is can it deliver the service that we need and for the range and also all the heavy duty components or light duty components that come into it. Although it's a light duty vehicle, it'll have some pieces to it that'll require some additional payload that can actually reduce the mileage a lot. I'm a big advocate, but I'm also being realistic about what the vehicles can do. Right now, there's a constant flow of new trucks, all electric trucks being announced. Super Bowl commercials where the range of trucks that are coming out, it's significant, and it's whether or not the ones that we can access right now are able to do the service that we need. So it's something that with my managers we'll be definitely exploring and seeing if there's a viable option there for us. We know it's coming, and we just have to make sure that it's not something where we have to end up having to rely on other vehicles if we can't do everything that we need it to do. So, but we are testing those systems out.
Okay, thank you. Director Marsh.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Boysen. Is one of the things you're considering potentially, or have you considered potentially diesel vehicles that could run on the biodiesel that out of the Malahat new location, or is that not on the radar?
Mr. Boysen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the director, we're looking at all the options. So I think biodiesel is something that's been in use in many vehicles for years. There's have been some challenges with it, I think, at times with some of the wear and tear on vehicles and some of the issues. I think some of them have been resolved, but it is one of the ones that we would look at all these as part of the procurement decisions, is to look at all the options. We'll always look at cost as well as a part of it. So we have to make sure that we're, what the overall cost is for the organization. But all these different types of vehicles give us quite a few options to consider.
Can I have a follow-up,
Director Marsh, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, former Mayor Lefebvre had a very big heavy-duty truck, maybe not as big as some of your smaller trucks would need to be, and he used biodiesel with no problem. So I'm glad you're looking into it. Thanks.
Thank you. And my apologies, Director Morrison. I missed you and went to Director Marsh. Go ahead, please. I prefer hands in the air than the hands on the screen, but that worked. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that staff know pretty clearly that we want to transition to the most fuel efficient and energy efficient and GHG efficient vehicles, and they get that part. I'm going to suggest that when this organization, and I think we're large enough, decides to seriously tackle fleet management as a study and as a practice within the organization. We've been to FCM and numerous organizations, municipal governments have found huge savings and efficiencies in actively looking into fleet management and operating as part of their organization. So at this point, we're having to trust the fact that the staff are putting forward the best vehicle recommendation for the needs, and I'm prepared to support this.
Thank you. I turn to Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps Mr. Dennison can clarify something here on the use of biodiesel. Did we not spend a couple of $100,000 on repairs the last time we used biodiesel?
Mr. Dennison.
Actually, Mr. Etherington would be the better one to answer that on biodiesel for utilities. I'm not sure we've had that for utilities. There was biodiesel used at Binks Creek and solid waste, and I think that resulted in some problems, and there were some repair bills. I don't think we've been using biodiesel in our utilities vehicles, but Mr. Etherington can clarify that.
Welcome, Mr. Etherington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Director Wilson. Yeah, in utilities we don't, and with the roll-off trucks and the curbside trucks, they did have issues with the biodiesel that were very costly.
Yep.
I'm not too sure if it was the percentage or what, but as Mr. Boysen said, there are better engines for biodiesel now, but for what we need in utilities, it's not really all that viable. It's for more heavy duty vehicles, and we're more half ton.
That's what I figured. Thank you very much.
Okay, so number 6 was moved by Director Salmon. Was there a second, or Director Salmon, you need to speak to this again?
Just to clarify, so my question really though is just about flexibility. As a budget meeting, I just since it's clear we save money in the long run through an EV, if you have to pay a bit more up front, is there flexibility in this? Like this particular item is 62,000. If it happened to be a bit more, is that a deal breaker, or do we work around that?
Madam Chair, there is room in the budget. In general, we've got some staffing positions we're not filling early and whatnot, so it could be managed without any difficulty.
Okay, thank you. So is that it, Director Salmon? You've moved number 6?
I moved that item.
I should have actually seconded. I think we've had a fair discussion on this one. Ms. Legault.
Sorry, after you take the vote on number 6, I have a comment to make.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. I need to move the resolutions first before we speak to it. Ms. Legault, comment.
So I just want to go back to number 2, that was pulled. And number 2 was where Director Acton introduced her new resolution, but number 2 was approval for a supplemental request for election assistant.
Oh, I didn't check that. Thank you so much. So now what? We'll have to go back to number 2 and vote on that, actually. So number 2, Director Salmon.
Okay, number 2. I've lost the thread. Do we just move the number 2 that we had?
Read that. Can you read that out so that we're clear? Because we should have actually, thank you, Ms. Legault. When Director Acton said 250, we should have read out 250, and we didn't. We just, so go ahead and read 250, number 2, and we will vote on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was that the supplemental request for function 250.0.5 temporary election assistant be approved.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried, and we will now have a 10-minute break. And Director Morrison, before the break?
Yeah, if I could just really quickly, following along when we were discussing function 250 and the motions that were read, I'm still unclear as to which motion we voted on because there was a duly moved and seconded motion that was the initial one. And then Ms. Weiner spoke and introduced something else. And so I don't know if we voted on the one that Ms. Weiner had provided us on, or whether it was the initial one that included not only the FCM, but the volunteer appreciation information. So we did vote. I
Volunteer
just don't know which
appreciation,
one.
volunteer appreciation wasn't in it, and it was the surplus. Yeah, so volunteer appreciation, I don't believe was in it. If there's anybody else that wants to correct me.
I just, sorry, Madam Chair, it just the motion that had it in it was on the floor, moved and seconded, and then I think the other one was introduced after the fact.
Ms. Legault.
So I take the point in process. The motion, I believe, was summarized before the vote. And the note that I took was the surplus balance from community information and FCM be carried forward into the 2022 budget. And as there were no issues raised at the time and the motion was announced as carried, I took that to be agreed to by consensus.
And that's what I understood as well. And Director Acton said she'd take out the volunteer. She spoke to that too. So I think we are clear on that, and that motion has passed. We'll now take a 10-minute break.
Video's live.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome back. Director Salmon, may I suggest that now we are going into supplementals, that we do it one at a time. That was a little bit confusing. When we were doing the water and sewer and the other ones in a block, it seemed to work. So because there will be some things that will be coming back later, we need to follow this so that we can clearly follow the direction and staff and clear up everything. It's different than the water and sewer and the other ones. So I think we'll go one at a time from here on in. So we're at number 11.
Okay, if you like, I note they are these are the next block of 10 would be all to do with water and sewer, but if you prefer, we can try one at a time.
Let's go ahead.
Okay.
Madam Chair, did you mean later when the supplemental?
No, just a sec. Barb, Ms. Mohan, could you come in and explain that, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just these items that have been forwarded from Electoral Area Services, I believe, they reflect supplementals in a state that may have been revised since they were recommended at that time, and so some of them will be coming up later in the agenda with revised information from staff. Especially there's a report on the agenda about staffing supplementals in particular. And there are some other revised reports around supplementals. So it's a little bit confusing, but I believe it would be recommended to go through these one by one and make sure that there isn't updated information later in the agenda before approving these items.
Yeah, and one example was the fire department that was coming later that we voted on. So yeah, so this will just clearly, we can follow along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good. So, well, just to review then for people following, it's we're at CR2 and then block 10, item 10 under CR2, and we are at item number 11, which I will read. It is that the supplemental request for function 618 bulk water well be approved. I'd like to move that, please.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Carry on.
Your next item number 12, that the supplemental request for function 619 water source development be approved.
Been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 13, that the supplemental request for function 620 water reservoir replacement be approved.
Been moved, second. Director Morrison, you want to speak to this? Go ahead.
Yes, if I could, please. We did have some additional discussions on this. I'm sure this is the Masachi 620. Yes. We had, I had in my head $100,000 bump in the additional cost of this, but I think I heard Mr. Etherington say 150,000. I think we're going to try and cover this through strictly through the gas tax that I have available. I just want to confirm that number and ask if finance might have a number of the total gas tax that's been allocated as to what's available to me.
Mr. Etherington or Mr. Dennison?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. To Director Morrison. Yeah, Ian, the number went up. I just looked at the quote before we started back up, and we're at 375 now. So it would be 150, not 100,000. So the increase from last year for the reservoir was almost $150,000 more.
Part two of that to finance, are we just about at our limit for community works funds or gas tax for my electoral area?
Ms. Weiner?
I just am madly going through files right now as we speak to find that information. Just one moment, please.
Madam Chair, is it maybe possible to come back to this item later at the end of it?
Yeah, I will provide that information. Actually, I'll email it directly to you, Director Morrison.
Thank you. Move this be tabled to later in the meeting.
Okay, so this is number 12, am I correct? 619?
13, I believe.
13.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Director Sam, and we will come back to that one.
Okay, so we'll go to number 14. That the supplemental request for function 640 Saltaire Water Treatment Plant be approved.
Been moved. Second. Director Smith, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I know that staff is currently reviewing the bids, and so I'm not sure if there will be changes required. So I was just going to ask staff if we should table this for later, or are you comfortable with this?
Mr. Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are comfortable with this. There is some process yet to go through, but the numbers were acceptable. And there's still some refinement in negotiation with because it's not a fixed price tender where you're bound to that figure. It's a proposal call, and so there's some room for discussions. But we believe the resources we have in the budget will cover it, at least for 2022. So no need to come back.
Okay, going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Carry on, Director Salmon.
Thank you. So the next one is number 15. That the supplemental request for function 653 dam decommissioning be approved.
It's been moved. Second. Seeing no other hands, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Thank you. So the next one, number 16, that the supplemental request for function 680 water treatment plant and water main extension be approved.
Been moved. I don't see a seconder. Second. Wait a second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 17, that the supplemental request for function 802 integration to mill-based sewer be approved.
It's been moved. Second. It's been seconded. Just waiting to see. I was moving a little too briskly before, so now I'm taking my time. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 18, that the supplemental request for function 810, Missachi sewer treatment, be approved.
Moved and seconded. Go ahead, Director Morrison. Did you need to speak to it or just seconding? Okay. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 19, that the supplemental request for function 811, sewer odor control, be approved.
That's been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 20, that the supplemental request for function 812, Cobble Hill Village sewer treatment and collection upgrade, be approved.
Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Thank you. I think that was it for the water and sewer section. So we'll go to number 21, that the supplemental request for function 231, Area A roadside pathways, be approved.
Been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 22, that the supplemental request for function 232, Shawnigan Lake Rail Trail Phase 3, be approved.
It's been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 23, that the supplemental request for function 232, Old Baldy Mountain Staging Area Phase 1, be approved.
Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 24, that the supplemental request for function 232, Parkland Acquisition, be approved.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 25, that the supplemental request for function 233, Cobble Hill Common Amphitheater, be approved.
Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Number 26, that the supplemental request for function 234, Wessex Ravine Park Community Pathway Connection, be approved.
Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 27, that the 2022 draft budget for function 235, Area E roadside pathways, be amended by number 1, increasing requisition by $5,525, and number 2, increasing transfer to capital reserves by $5,525.
Been moved and seconded by alternate director oh, no, not seconded. It's been.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make a comment about that or question.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded, and go ahead, alternate director McNeil.
Okay, it's a supplemental request for function 235 Area E roadside pathway in the amount of $820,606 funded through federal gas tax funds be approved.
So is this something with staff that's coming later, or go ahead, Director Farquhar? Director Farquhar. Mr. Farquhar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the board, I would suggest that the current motion on the table be addressed, and then the supplemental one that is being brought forward by alternate Director McNeil be separately introduced at that time.
Okay, thank you. So we will vote on this that has now currently been moved and seconded, what we have on the floor, and then we will go back to you, alternate director McNeil. Okay, seeing no questions on this one, I'm going to call it. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. So, Mr. Farquhar, so it's appropriate now to do this second motion with alternate director McNeil.
Madam Chair, that would be appropriate at this time.
Thank you. Go ahead again. You can repeat your recommendation.
That the supplemental request for function 235 Area E roadside pathways in the amount of $820,606 funded through federal gas tax funds be approved.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Go ahead, Director Martman.
Eric, maybe I could get a little background on this and which gas tax funds they're coming from. It doesn't specify.
It would likely be Area E, but I go with Mr. Farquhar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, unfortunately, the special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting dealing with the budgets on January 13th, this supplemental was missed when the previous matter that was just passed was brought forward. So this is just reintroducing the supplemental from the January 13th agenda, and it is gas tax funding specifically previously approved for Electoral Area E.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification that it was missed. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. So number 28 is that the supplemental request for function 236, Massachi Lake Playground Replacement, be approved.
Moved, seconded by Director Morrison. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 29, that the supplemental request for function 237, Stocking Creek Bridge Replacement, be approved.
Moved and second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 30, that the supplemental request for function 237, Area G Community Trails, be approved.
Been moved, second. Seeing no hands up, all in favor? Yeah, I said the seconder. Okay. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Salmon.
Thank you. Number 31, that the supplemental request for function 238, Yellow Point Trail, be approved.
Been moved, second. Any discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 32, that the supplemental request for function 239, Area I Community Parks Trails, be approved.
Moved and seconded. Seeing no hands up, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 33, that the supplemental request for function 239, Price Park, Type 2 Trail Upgrades, be approved.
Moved, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 34, that the supplemental request for function 239, Stoker Park Beach Improvements, be approved.
Moved, second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 35, that the supplemental request for function 279, Parks Operations Vehicle Replacement, be approved.
Moved. Don't see a seconder. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 36, that the portion of the supplemental request for function 279-280, Bings Creek Operations Center function 279, be approved.
Been moved, second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Thank you. Number 38, that the portion of the supplemental request for function 279-280, Park Operations Technician related to function 279, be approved.
Been moved, second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
And number 39, that the 2022 draft budget for function 640 Saltair Water System be approved.
Moved and second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Thank you. That is my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Salmon. That was good job. We're turning now to CR3, Ms. Legault.
Madam Chair, CR3 is the report and recommendations of the Special Cowichan Community Center Commission meeting of January 18th.
And we don't have a director here from that commission. Director Marsh.
I believe alternate director Sowry is on that commission.
Yes, would you like to read them out, alternate director Sowry? CR3, it's 1 through 12. We'll do one at a time, or
okay. Yep. That the 2022 draft budget for function 420 CCC events and services be approved.
It's been moved. Seconder. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. I'm just thinking this one, sorry, with staff, if this one can go ahead in a block because it's from the commission, the Community Center Commission. Just turning to staff if that's appropriate with this one, if that's okay. Mr. Elzinga, is that appropriate or should we do one at a time?
Madam Chair, it's certainly at the direction of the board. So staff are comfortable if you'd like to move this as a block. Also, I'd like to introduce Couch Community Center Manager Rob Williams, who I believe is on for any questions as well.
Welcome, Rob. Okay, so if you're comfortable with that, Director Sowry, if you would like to move 2 through 12, unless anybody would like some pulled, Director Marsh. Director Marsh.
Yeah, given this is, I'll just say the first one that we're talking about, I believe, unless it's all of them and someone from staff can suggest that to me. In North Couch in the south end, the cost of the 420 events and services for South End North Cowichan taxpayers is $23 and, oh, I think I'm getting that wrong. Am I getting that wrong? What is the cost for South End North Cowichan taxpayers per 100,000? Can you break that down, Mr. Elzinga?
Mr. Elzinga or Mr. Williams, who can, or I'm not sure we can.
What I just wanted to point out, Madam Chair, is the City of Duncan Area D and E altogether pay approximately 50% of what North Cowichan South End residents pay. And so I'm just thinking probably in case there are directors in North Cowichan that have an objection to any of this, we should do them separately.
Okay, I'll do them separately. We'll carry on with number 2. Go ahead, Director Sowry.
So number 2, that the supplemental request for function 420 CCC events and services condition-based assessment be approved.
That's been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Carry on.
Number 3, that the supplemental request for function 420 CCC events and services building HVAC upgrades be approved.
Moved. Seconder. Second. Any discussion? Director Stone?
Just a point of process question. From staff, is the draft budget including these supplementals, or are these going to be in addition to the draft budget that's on the website right now?
Ms. Weiner?
Through the chair to Director Stone, there at the beginning, if you look at the individual functions, that does not include the supplementals, but if you click on the here part at the very top of the website, that goes and shows from each of the meetings, all of the additions and the impact to requisition to the current date.
So Schedule E, does that include the supplementals that are being approved today?
My understanding is yes.
Okay, as long as that's the case, I'm happy to proceed. If not, then we need to probably go through some of this again, but.
Okay. Where were we?
Moved and seconded on the third.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you. Go ahead.
Number 4, that the supplemental request for function 420 CCC events and services elevator repairs be approved.
Been moved. Is there a seconder? Can't see a seconder. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 5, that the supplemental request for function 420 CCC events and services LED arena lights be approved.
That's been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
And number 6, that the supplemental request for function 420 CCC events and services windows, doors, and flooring be approved.
Been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 7, that the supplemental request for function 420 CCC events and services roof assessment be approved.
It's been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 8, that the 2020 draft budget for function 423 CCC arena be approved.
Been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 9, that the supplemental request for function 423 CCC arena Zamboni replacement be approved.
Moved. Is there a seconder? Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 10, that the 2022 draft budget for function 426 CCC theater be approved.
Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 11, that the supplemental request for function 426 CCC theater condition-based assessment be approved.
Been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
And last, number 12, that the 2022 draft budget for function 427 CCC library be approved.
Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Alternate Director Sowry. Good job. Moving on now. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item CR4 is the report and recommendations from the Kerry Park Recreation Commission meeting of January 25th.
And who will be taking this one? Director Acton?
Sure. Would you like me to? I'd be happy to.
Yes, go ahead.
Let me just make sure I got it all open here. Okay. So this is the report and recommendations from the Kerry Park Recreation Commission meeting of January 25th, 2022. Number 1, or can I move number 1 through 6, please?
We're actually doing them one at a time now.
Oh.
I've had complaints on that, so I
Okay.
just.
Well, this one's pretty clear, but okay, I'll.
Actually, Madam Chair, it was only if you don't mind.
Oh,
it was
okay.
Only that the previous block didn't only include area directors. It included the municipality and the city of Duncan.
Yes, I appreciate that. So is everyone's mind? So 1 through 6 then? Director Acton?
Please, 1 through 6 for the Kerry Park Commission. The members of the commission feel comfortable with this. We've looked at this budget a few times, so thank you. I move that.
Thank you. It's been seconded by Director Stone. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you. Turning now, Ms. Legault.
CR5, report and recommendations of the Special Committee of the Whole meeting of January 27th.
And Director Stone.
Thank you. So is the board comfortable if we do these in the chunks that are laid out, or do you want to go one by one?
I think Director Staples, you had your hand up.
I would just like to pull item, just 1 second, 2.12.
Okay, so I'll do that in the next block. I was going to do them like each unit number, like
Yes.
1 through 6.
I just have to recuse myself for conflict on that one, so thanks.
Okay, so when we come to 2, we'll pull 12, and then we'll pull any other ones. Does anyone want anything pulled from CR5 1 through 6?
Seeing nobody.
Okay, so I would move those items, CR5 1 through 6.
Been seconded by Director Wilson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Thank you. So on number 2, we've pulled number 12. Any other items that folks wish to pull other than number 12?
Not seeing any hands up.
Okay, so we'll move 1 through 16, less number 12.
Okay. Any discussion on any of those? Director Marsh.
Who's seconding, I believe.
Okay. Okay, all in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried. And number 12, Director Staples recuses herself.
Yeah, so
On what? Could you just state your?
She's been moved out already. She works for
Okay.
Planning Couch.
Okay. Thank you.
I need to recuse as well.
Okay.
I also work for social
Okay.
planning.
Yes. So I'll wait for you to tell me, Ms. Legault. Okay. Go
Okay,
ahead,
so
Director Stone.
move number 212. I have a seconder.
Been moved and seconded.
Sorry, it's been seconded.
Okay.
You do your job, Chair.
No. Is there any discussion on this one? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Yeah, wait for those two to come back in. Does anyone want any of number 3, 1 through 7 to be pulled?
Well, we'll wait for them to come in and state it again. Okay, state it again.
Anyone wish any number 3, 1 through 7, any of those need to be pulled? Director Morrison.
Just a question. We're starting to get into some of the almost, it's not quite supplemental, but administrative office and the likes. Will we be stopping at some point or to consider some of the capital projects and individual hires? I don't think it's in this number, but will we be doing individual discussion of these items when they come up?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if there's any of these in this 3 that in this section.
If not, I'll move 3, 1 through 7.
Moved and seconded. Gonna call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
All right, moving on to number 4. There's 1 through 10. Any of those items folks wish to pull?
Seeing none, did you get a seconder? I didn't. It was seconded by Director Smith. Any questions on this, Director Smith?
Thank you. I just would like some clarification either on 280 or 283 from staff with regards to the Kinsel Trestle revitalization. We have been receiving a lot of emails, and so I'm just wondering where we have those in these 2 budgets and what maybe some more information. Thank you.
Mr. Farquhar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For clarity, with respect to 280 or 283 and the Kinsel Trestle, is there a specific question about either of those budgets? 280 funds regional parks, and function 283 funds rehabilitation and ongoing operation of the Kinsel Trestle structure itself.
Follow up, Director Smith?
So in those budgets, are we looking at receiving grant funding that there seems to have been a news release recently put out by CVRD Communications. It wasn't received by the directors. So I'm just trying to sort out between all the emails we're receiving, a news release from the CVRD, if we're headed in a direction that we're trying in these 2 budgets, and if we could have some more clarification on that.
Mr. Farquhar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Director Smith. Back in 2020, the board approved applying to a provincial federal COVID relief grant to help stimulate economics recovery in communities. At the time, the board gave authorization to apply for 2 projects, one being for a new staging area for the Kinsel Trestle Gateway. The first round of considerations by the province on that grant, we were advised that the grant was not approved. But more recently, the grant providers came back and advised that a portion of the grant has been approved for the regional district to the tune of $471,000 for investment in developing a new staging area for the historic Kinsale Trestle in the community in northwest Shawnigan Lake. And so that has been previously approved by the board, and as a grant being approved by the board will be brought into the budget as an approved grant. And perhaps Ms. Wayner can speak to that specifically as to how grants previously approved by the board are brought into budgets.
Ms. Wayner?
Through the board to directors, chair to Director Smith, grants that come in through are recorded in the budget and go in once they're approved. If the grant is not approved, sometimes it has to be funded by different ways, and the grant funding has to be showing that it's in there. So there's been two ways that grants have been put in. It's been put in without the grant funding showing. Other times it's put in with the grants, just on the off chance you may get the grant, and the funds are not expended unless the grant has been approved.
Follow up, Director Smith? And I have Director Salmon and Marsh, so I do have those two if their hands. Oh, and Wilson and Acton.
Thank you. I have gone back and read the documents from the 2020 that was presented to the committee, and I didn't see that it stated there that a park in Electoral Area B was going to be the staging area for that parking, and Function 280 is funded by all of the CVRD areas, and Function 283 is funded by all CVRD areas. So I'm wondering how a park that belongs to Area B is to be turned into a parking lot that is part of 280 and 283. Maybe we can have some clarification on that, please.
Mr. Farquhar.
Chair. Yeah, the report that was brought forward at the time the grant was announced and direction was given by the board, Taylor Park was identified in the staff report to the board, identifying that as being right adjacent to the Cowichan Valley Trail, and that the park is owned by the regional district. It is a park that is also identified way back when as a potential place for a staging, rest stop area along the Cowichan Valley Trail. So given it's right adjacent to the CBT, and it was identified with the board at the time that the grant opportunity was brought forward, the application was made.
Okay, I turn to Director Salmon, Marsh, Wilson, and Acton. Director Salmon, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. So just a question, Mr. Farquhar. So is there going to be further environmental study on this before we go ahead with the parking lot? I know there's been community concern. There's a wetland part of the property, et cetera.
Madam Chair, through the Director Salmon, as with any project done by the CVRD, we endeavor to undertake all the necessary assessments, including environmental work, to support the project moving forward.
Director Marsh?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Director Salmon. I always want to say Blaze. Through you to Mr. Farquhar, Madam Chair. So I think I heard you say that before any works are done at Taylor Park, the board will have received an environmental review of how those works might affect the ecological services of the wetlands that are there and other potential ecological services. Am I correct?
Madam Chair, for clarity, there have been no wetlands identified in Taylor Park. We've had some preliminary environmental consultants out there. There's been no identification of wetlands in the park area. And as with any project, as mentioned earlier, we endeavor to, once a project is approved, to undertake all the necessary studies and design plans to meet with all the requirements to allow a project to proceed.
So if maybe I need to reframe it better, Madam Chair, may I have a follow-up quickly?
Go ahead.
So if we approve this right now, the staff decide and it just gets done, there's no chance for the board to have input if there is a concern? I'm trying to address the concerns we're hearing from the community, and I haven't had a chance to go down there and have a look.
Madam Chair, it's at the discretion of the board. Normally when projects are approved by the board as part of a budget process, unless there are further requirements. For example, we have the roadside pathway project in Area A, which also requires permits and leases to do with the Ministry of Transportation and with the school district. Those were recently brought back to the committee and the board for approval. But for projects that are approved, unless they're otherwise given direction by the board, staff endeavor to undertake to complete those projects, endeavoring to do all of the work required to make sure those projects meet all the regulations and requirements. So at the discretion of the board, if the board is looking to have something specifically brought back, staff would appreciate that direction.
So if I may, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
More?
I do have Directors
Yeah.
Wilson and Acton to follow, and Director Acton may be able to enlighten you with some information as
Okay,
well.
I'll see it until then, and if I need to ask another question, I'll put my hand up. Thank you.
Okay, I turn to Director Wilson and then Acton.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, there's been a lot of concern about this, and I, for one, have been down there to take a look. I would encourage all the directors to go down there and take a look, but I'm getting very concerned about some of the phrases that are being used here. First of all, it was a car park, and now it's a staging area. We've already heard environmental impact studies, and then I heard Mr. Farquhar say that no wetlands have been identified. I haven't seen any of those reports here yet. And yes, we're talking about approval of a grant here, but to be perfectly honest, are we not putting the cart before the horse here? We've not done any studies on this area at all, and yet we're applying for money to go ahead and build a car park. Folks, you need to go down there and take a look at what's going on down there. It's one of the other things is estimates. Have we got any estimates as to if this goes ahead, how much it's going to cost? Because it's going to cost a lot of money, and certainly $500,000 is not enough for it. I can't approve this one at all. Thank you very much.
Director Acton?
There was no question in there?
Was there a question in there?
What estimates? Yeah, okay, fair enough. What estimates have we got on costs on going forward here, and when are we going to get the environmental studies, which we need before we go any further? There's two questions.
Mr. Farquhar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Director Wilson. We have right now a RFX out to engage with the appropriate environmental and engineering firms to undertake the work to do the full environmental assessment, and as well as the design and cost estimating that would be the basis for proceeding with construction. So that work has to be done and be funded through the grant.
So follow up, please, Madam Chair. So we will be getting environmental impact studies and estimates for costs before this goes for full approval of any kind by the board. Is that correct?
Staff are getting the sense from the board that this is something that they wish to see brought back. So staff can certainly bring this back once we have that information.
Good, thank you.
Director Acton.
Well, I'm not sure if everyone was on that email, but there is some community information regarding, there's going to be community outreach happening on Wednesday evening. People are welcome to join that presentation and public input because there's there's a large portion of the community who are extremely challenged by where the parking is now. We heard from them quite a bit through COVID. So, I hope that at the moment I have an open mind and I'm looking to receive all the information.
Director Marsh.
Yeah, given Mr. Farquhar has committed to bring back all the studies and everything before this goes ahead, so I can support accepting the grant. Thank you.
Okay, so Director Stone, back to you. I can't hear you.
Too many mice. I believe the block was moved and seconded. Ms. Legault? Yes. So it would be just to call the question.
Just a second. I have a hand waved here. Director Kuhn.
I'd like number 8 pulled.
Okay, so can we, I guess you can call the question, Madam Chair, on 1 through 10 less number 8.
Okay, that has been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Now we turn to number 8. Do you want to read that, Director Stone?
Sure. Sorry, that the 2022 draft budget for Function 285, surprise, regional parkland acquisition, be approved as presented.
Okay, go ahead, Director Kuhn. Oh, it's been moved and seconded. Go ahead, Director Kuhn.
I have no comments. I just want to move against it.
Okay, so I'm gonna, and then I saw Director Smith waving her hand. Was this to do with number 8, Director Smith?
Unfortunately, we had moved forward. I was just going to check on 280 and 283 if we needed to make any type of recommendation to have staff bring back the information on the Kensal Trestle revitalization and the parking lot and the grant.
Ms. Legault, do we need a separate recommendation for that, or was it just intended when for 280 and 283? Go ahead, Mr. Farquhar.
Madam Chair, we'll take that as clear direction of the board
Thank
to bring the information forward when we have it available.
Okay, now we go back to number 8, and we will vote on number 8 so that Director Kuhn can raise his hand. Opposed? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Kuhn, Director Wilson, and Director Smith. Thank you very much. Number 5, Director Stone.
So we have 2 numbers under number 5, and that is 106, 107. I do recognize that there's a staff report later, but I don't know if we want to deal with these now and in the staff report later it then amends that, or if this is incorporating the staff report. But the recommendations are 5, that draft number 1, that draft 2022 draft budget for Function 106 commuter transit be approved, and that number 2, 2022 draft budget for Functional 107 transit be approved.
Been moved and seconded. And seeing no hands up, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
All right, so 6 is a big one. There's 27 functions in there.
6 supplementals.
Yes. So I am not sure if folks want to just pull the ones that are important or go through every one by one.
I think the staff has suggested one by one with supplementals so that we're not getting confused.
Okay. So 6.1, that supplemental request for Function 235/100 Allenby Road Active Transportation is amended to decrease the contribution from Function 235 Operating Reserve by $125,500 and increase Function 235 gas tax by $125,500 be approved.
That's been moved. Second.
I moved it. Yeah.
Yeah. All in favor? Is there any question on this one? Because I'm seeing we have the alternate director here. That's good. Okay. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Carry on.
Number 2, that the supplemental request for Function 100 General Government GIS staffing be approved.
Moved. Second. You're seconding that, Director Wilson?
I am seconding. I have a question as well, please, Madam Chair.
Go ahead. It's been moved and seconded. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, as a general question to finance, there's a lot of staff requests here. Is there any way that we can get some kind of estimate as to how much this will add to the budgets in terms of financially, first of all, in numbers, but also in percentages, if all of the extra staffing were included here?
Mr. Crothers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just noting that we have a supplemental report at the end of the agenda with regard to prioritization of the supplemental staffing requests. If you recall, staff were asked to go away and to analyze those requests and to prioritize them. And so we may be well served to review that report prior to dealing with all of these individual items. I think we may have put the cart before the horse, but if any of our staff want to weigh in on that, but I think that may be the appropriate way, and then we can get into the detail around these specific positions.
Yeah, I would prefer to see that done as well, please, Madam Chair, with that report at the end there.
Go ahead, Director Stone.
I would just suggest that if that's the case, that we could table this one. Has been moved and seconded, but I do have a question on this specific position. This is a GIS position, which largely serves utilities and land use services. I'm curious if this is an allocation budget or if general government is paying for a staff position that I'm not sure how municipalities would take advantage of that GIS staff. It just seems misplaced in function 100.
Ms. Weiner?
Through the chair to Director Stone, GIS is funded 80% by EAs, 20% by general government, but it's housed, the actual budget's housed with IT and GIS all in the 100 budget, and then there's an allocation that's done from the EAs.
Thank you.
And Director Morrison?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just looking at the time, and I think we're losing Director Martman here in a moment. Would it be appropriate if we were to maybe look at the lunch break soon, and then we could have the report outlining the priorities, and then dive into the specifics after lunch, or just?
I was sort of thinking the same thing now that we have this number 2 has been moved and seconded, and we'll hold off. Director Stone, do you have any preference?
I would say, like I said, I'm prepared to make a motion to table that, and we can come back to it after we do those reports.
Okay.
The suggestion to break for lunch 10 minutes early makes sense as well, just based on scheduling. It's helpful to me as well, but
okay.
But I would move to table the resolution that's on the floor, at least to take care of that part of the procedure.
Okay. Director Kuhn, you were moving to table?
No, I think Dr. Stone moved it. I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So it looks like the next items 2 through 9 are all to do with the staffing, which is subject of that final staff report today. So should they all be tabled until after we look at that?
Oh, yeah, they would be, but I'm just.
They would be because this one was moved and seconded, so we would come back to that. Okay. So we wouldn't go to those.
We're not going to go to those. All right, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question on tabling number 2 until after. All in favor? Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Director Stone?
So I believe then, are we not waiting on these until after lunch, and we'll reorder the agenda to do the staff report on the prioritization exercise?
That sounds good. It's now 10 to 12. What is our lunch break? What would people? It's a 30-minute.
12:30.
12:30.
We come back at 12:30. All right. So we will do that. So we take a break.
Miss Weiner has her hand up there, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Weiner.
If the board would like updates on numbers, 45 minutes would help finance staff to do some calculations behind the scenes for any adjustments, and we'd appreciate maybe 15 to be able to eat. So if that was a possibility, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So it's a 45-minute break to help out everyone. All right?
She asked for an hour, I think.
You asked for an
45
hour?
minutes was to do the work, I think, Madam Chair. Ms. Weiner could clarify.
We can get it done within 45 minutes. And
Thank you. Okay, so see everyone back in 45.
Video's live.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed a few moments of quiet and had a lunch break and got to enjoy a little bit of a sun that's out there too. And with that, we will start with staff report 8. And then we'll go back to Director Stone. Ms. Legault?
Thank you, Madam Chair. SR 8 is a report from the Corporate Services Department on supplementary staffing prioritization, and the proposed recommendation is that all staffing supplementals submitted for the 2022 budget be approved.
Right. Is it Ms. Mohan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you like me to do just a brief synopsis of the report, or?
Please.
All right. So at the January 27th special committee of the whole meeting of the board, staff received direction from the board to look at the supplemental staffing requests and prioritize them to give the board some more information so that they can make decisions about which staffing supplementals should be approved in the budget process. And so this report outlines the process that we went through for that. We basically ranked them into 2 categories, so priority 1 categories and priority 2 categories. I also want to identify that the supplemental staffing requests were split into 2 categories. The first category was requests that were associated with the core budget. So just alerting the board that in terms of staffing capacity, our ability to deliver on the core budget items is impacted right now by a lack of staffing. And so that's why those supplemental requests are there. And then additional to that, there are some supplemental requests, non-staff supplemental requests that would, if approved, also require some further staffing. And I believe there were 4 staffing supplementals associated with non-staff supplementals. So we've divided them in those ways. Our recommendation is to approve all the staffing requests. When we did do the analysis, because of where we are in the calendar year and recognizing that hiring takes a little bit of time, for some of the positions which are newly added positions in the budget, if we go ahead and hire for those, it's not reasonable to assume that they, of course, would have wages going back to January 1st. So we've adjusted those wage and salary amounts reflecting a start date in the second quarter of the year or later in some cases, and that resulted in some savings. So those savings were incorporated into the totals that you see in this report. The savings amounted to $373,000, or about 0.85% of requisition. Which means that the remaining total impact to requisition of all of the staffing supplemental submissions is $899,621, which represents about 2.05% requisition increase. And so I believe that is some of the information that Director Wilson was requesting earlier in the meeting. So it's there for him in the report. And the report just goes into, in a really general way, highlighting the fact that general government positions support all functions. And if we don't have capacity in general government, then there are going to be anticipated challenges or inability to meet the board's strategic priorities, asset management plans, regulatory requirements, potentially, et cetera. And those are summarized for you under the strategic business plan considerations. So areas that we know for sure will be affected are social procurement, hazard assessment and emergency management as part of climate change adaptation, waste reduction initiatives, harmonization and modernization of OCPs, and parks protection and preservation. So those are ones that are easily identifiable as being impacted if we don't have our supplemental staffing requests approved. And of course, because these are a number of these are in general government, there may be other impacts felt throughout the organization.
Thank you. I do have a few hands that have gone up. I turn to Director Stone. Director Stone.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I just before you come on, I forgot to actually acknowledge that we have another alternate director in with us. So I'd like to welcome alternate Director Barry Marcotte. Welcome to our committee meeting, our board meeting, and go ahead, Director Stone.
No, I just wanted to say hi to Barry. No, hi, hello, Director Marcotte, or alternate Director Marcotte. Good to see you. So again, just going back to the question I had earlier, are these supplemental staffing requests included in the Schedule E that's presently on the CVRD website?
I believe the answer to that through the chair is yes.
All I needed to know. Thank you.
And yeah, sorry, Ms. Weiner can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they are
I
incorporated.
turn to Director Marsh and then Salmon. And then
I had
Wilson.
the same question as Director Stone.
Director Salmon and Wilson. Oh, just to hold it, go ahead, Ms. Weiner.
Through the chair, actually to Director Stone, the amounts that are in the Schedule E are the higher amounts. They were not adjusted as per this report. So just to let you know, I wanted to clarify that.
Director Stone?
So the Schedule E, if these supplementals were approved with the revised amounts, would actually be updated and the numbers would go down slightly. Okay, thank you.
So I turn to Director Salmon, then Wilson.
Yeah, thank you. So similar question, but so Natalie, that the 5.44% that we had overall increased to requisition, is this included in that, this 2%, or is this in addition to that?
Through the chair to Director Salmon, the 5.44 included all of these staffing positions at the higher rate. That 5.44 would go down based on the recommendation in the report.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wilson and then Kuhn.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a little bit off key here. Alternate Marcotte, are you a relative of Miss Mary Marcotte? And if you are, could you pass on my regards to her next time you see her? Okay, I'll take that as
yes, I will. I didn't know how to unmute. I'll be seeing her this evening.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Yeah, I've got a question here on the levels of pay here, and I know that this is probably mandated elsewhere, but I have to. There was a bit on the news last night. An MLA earns $111,000 a year. A minister is $166,000, and yet we have an HR wellness at 102, a records at 104K a year, an HR consultant at 152K a year, and a millwright 172K a year. That's a huge amount of money. Where do these figures come from?
Through the chair to Director Wilson. So in the detailed reports from the supplementary requests, you can see how those totals are arrived at. But generally, it's a combination of both direct salary plus benefits overhead. So in the public sector, benefits overhead is for our budget running at around 30%. Additionally, if it's a newly established position, we budget for a one-time expense of a workstation, if it's an office position, or a one-time expense of any other tools and equipment that are employer provided to the new employee. So those are the basic elements of the request, and then different requests may have other associated one-time or ongoing costs. So it's not the number you see represented is not the salary figure; it's the total cost of bringing that person on board.
Okay, thank you.
I turn to Director Kuhn.
Yes, I don't know how most of you feel about this. I feel a little bit lost with this whole thing. I guess my trouble is we've had so many staff changes, and when you get so many staff changes, like I'm trying to stay away from micromanaging. Obviously, that's not our task, but you wonder what would be the normal, let's say, in order to have the CVRD work at an acceptable level, what would be the normal requirement of staffing in some of the departments? And for instance, the planning department. So we've had a whole bunch of changes there. I don't know if they are now filled with enough employment or if there are still positions open. And that's one concern I have. It's hard for me to fully endorse any additional staff, not knowing what the normal requirement would be. So it's kind of like I'm walking in the dark. The other question I have is when staff changes take place, let's say somebody quits, the budget is already approved, so that money stays there, right? I mean, it doesn't get taken out of the budget. It stays there. So if a new person gets hired, he or she simply jumps into that position and the pay goes on, right? It's not like the pay was taken off and now we need a new approval for more pay. So I just want to point that out. I usually do very well with numbers and figures, but to me, it's almost we keep hiring and we keep hiring and we keep hiring, and I'm losing sight as to, okay, where's the actual necessity? And I'm not trying to accuse staff of over hiring. That's not the thing, but we are supposed to approve something, and in order to approve something, we pretty well have to have a pretty good impression as to, okay, is that the right amount of employment or isn't it? Because if we don't, then we just kind of walk in the dark and we say, oh, okay, we'll go for that. So that's where my problem is. I don't really know how to present a question there, but I do have a bit of a concern because I feel like every year we keep hiring more staff and more staff and more staff, and we keep saying, well, yeah, we need more staff because the area is growing, and it could very well be in the last year or two that the area has grown quite a bit. But I'd like to somehow feel more secure about that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, well, staff has explained why it's necessary, and in a report it does explain, otherwise the services will need to be cut. So I'm not sure if you're looking for an answer from staff, because that was just some commentary. So I turn to Director Wilson. Oh, Morrison, then Wilson.
Madam Chair, Mr. Crothers popped up there. Perhaps we could hear from him before I make my comment.
Sorry, I missed.
Yeah, that's okay, Madam Chair. As you say, I'm not sure that Director Kuhn had a specific question. In terms of the turnover of staff, when we look at our staffing complement, we assume that all of our approved positions are staffed. And that's the basis that we operate on. And we're often in a deficit situation where we've had staff turnover and we have recruitment lag and not having replaced positions. This regional district is becoming increasingly complex, not just in terms of internal growth, in terms of the services that we offer, in terms of the systems that we're employing, whether it be asset management, whether it be records management, whether it be human resources management. The complexity of our organization, and as I've said to you before, I think out of the 27 regional districts, the CVRD is around number 6 in terms of complexity and size and scope relative to the other regional districts. We also have a number of external factors that influence regulations and requirements, whether it be WorkSafe BC, Island Health. There's a whole bunch of converging demands that increase the complexity of the work that we do. I can tell you right now that this organization, as an organization, a good portion of our staff are overworked. They are working far beyond capacity to keep this organization operating. They have their phones on 24/7. They're working at night. They're working on weekends, trying to keep up with the volume of emails, the volume of inquiries from the public, the resolutions that come out of the board, and the day-to-day work that's involved in operating a local government of this size and this scope. And so when our staff come forward, senior managers with requests for staffing, they've been well thought out. We've looked at other alternatives, reallocating staff, whatever we can do. And at the end of the day, we are very much a people-based industry. We deliver our services through people. And if we don't have the people, we can't keep up with the demand. And as Chair Ianniardo said, every one of those staffing supplementals has a rationale and has an implication of not funding those positions. We always appreciate that this is a difficult conversation for the board to have. And so when I bring forward these, I don't bring them forward lightly. But I also have to understand that this organization has a lot of demands. And if we continue to not staff this organization appropriately, you're going to continue to lose staff because we can't keep working people to the point where they just simply never see light at the end of the tunnel. Because there's other organizations that are staffed appropriately, and when you go to work, you do a good day's work, and sure, there's always time for overtime and requirements in that regard. But in this organization, I can assure you that the work that's required is beyond the capacity of what we currently have for staffing. And so when we bring forward requests for additional staffing, they're well thought out. They're presented with a recognition that there are concerns about the levels of staffing. But I have to make sure that on your behalf, I'm operating this organization and that staff have a good workplace and a reasonable workload. And right now, I'll be honest, in many cases, that workload is far beyond the capacity of our staff to handle. So that's why you have existing or new positions being asked of you for the organization.
Thank you so much. I turn to Director Morrison, Marsh, and Smith. Director Morrison, go ahead.
Madam Chair, you've missed me again.
Oh, I thought I had
You did.
you.
I'm after Mr. Director Morrison.
You were after Director Salmon. Did you speak then?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Okay, I struck you off my list and went to Kuhn. Must be something in the name Wilson. I don't know. Sorry. So you go ahead, and then I'll go to Director Morrison. Director Wilson, go ahead.
Okay, I thought it was after Director Morrison. Okay.
Go ahead.
So let's go back to what's said. Yes, we're increasingly complex and all the rest of it. And this is one of the reasons why not so long ago, the CAO brought up the subject of a service review. And this is something that we need to look at. Are we taking on more and more stuff that we don't need to take on? We need to get back to our mandated core services. Now, on the service review, I have asked for information on how many services we actually have now, how many we had in the year 2000, and how many we had in the year 2010, so that we can look at this staffing much more analytically. I have not yet had even the courtesy of a response to that yet. We need to start looking at just what we are taking on. Is it necessary? And is it mandated? In most cases, I don't think it is. I think we're taking on far more than we're supposed to. And this is the result of it here.
That must be your personal opinion.
It is my opinion. Yes, it is. And I'm going to ask a question as to when are we going to do something about this?
We had our board with 15 people, so we will take, we do know how many functions we have. And what is your question?
How many functions have we had in the past, and when are we going to get a service review to make this less complex?
How many functions? I think we know how many functions, 170. What are the functions we have, Ms. Mohan? Are actually, Mr. Crothers, we have 170?
We have 178 functions. I think the point of Director Wilson's question was historical. And if the board is interested in that information, we're more than happy to gather it. We are right in the midst of budget right now, and all of our staff are immersed in budget. I would suggest that if this board is interested in wanting to pursue some form of a service review moving forward, that that instruction come from the board that would also include accompanying background information that would help support you to make that decision. At this point in time, I've received no direction from the board in that regard, and so I would leave that with the board to have that conversation.
Thank you. I turn now to Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really tempted to engage, but not on that. So my question in regards to this report for staff. So I really need to work off of papers that I can read, and it's really hard reading these reports on the small screens. I've got about 8 tabs open right now, but the question is in regards to attachment A. And I think Ms. Mohan made mention of this, that there's a reduction because it's not a full year. And so I'm looking at attachment A, and thank you for including the 2023 full cost of the positions that are there. I think that's important. But that's a $600,000 bump for 2023 that's built in from what I can understand. So I couple of questions around what we have in this list. And I should ask my first question. Does that 600,000 bump for next year that'll be built in. Is that the 0.9, I believe, the reduction that we're having in from what was published initially in the new number, and that was in the previous report or the earlier part of the report, I believe. It says here the savings is 0.85. Is that correct?
Through the chair
0.85%.
to Director Morrison, the 0.85 reduction is identified because the positions on this list, there's just no way we can fill some of them, the ones that we're hiring for, before Q2 of this year. And so we adjusted this year's annual salary figure for that. But if they are ongoing positions, because not all these positions are ongoing, right? Some of them are temporary for this year related to the election. Some of them have partial funding this year, but not into the future, et cetera. So the 2023 requisition number reflects the state of affairs if all of the newly hired positions were still with us because they're ongoing and starting of January 1st, 2023. So
yeah, that's what I understood, and I'm just that's why I've got that chart open, because it looks like we are the election positions. That's fine; those won't be included in. You've also got under solid waste, I believe, some summer student positions, which I do believe we do each year, but there isn't any cost associated with that, and that's being paid from surplus anyways. So I'm just wanting to make everyone aware that there's 600,000 that will be built in that as the lowest figure starting next year when we approve these. And just a very brief commentary. I agree with what Mr. Crothers had said, and really the only time we have to have impact on the budget is the new hires that we've seemed to have all included this year. So that's the point where I'm paying a lot of attention to is the new hires, and we seem to have as a group said yes to just about all of them, unless there's some differing opinions today. That's where I was planning to focus most of this. So thank you for that, Ms. Mohan.
Turn to Director Marsh.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I can certainly understand my colleagues' frustration. We can make our screen pages bigger, but then you have to scroll back and forth. So it's an adjustment. But I also want to really acknowledge that our staff have really had to adjust to in these last couple of years, and that we haven't used paper budgets printed out as long as I've been at this table. So the other thing I wanted to say, I think most of them have been covered. I appreciated Mr. Carruthers reminding us, and I can attest that he's right, because some of the staff that left CVRD have come to North Cowichan, and they're among our best staff people. And so I think that he's right. We have to fund the things that we are offering, and according to Director Wilson, maybe if he wants to make a motion at a future time, the board will look at that. But when I look at these positions, aside from the election, which is for this year and then again in 4 years, these are pretty much core services. I acknowledge that maybe if we cut some core services, we wouldn't need quite as many people, but I just think, even though it's hard pill to swallow, this is to do this properly and meet the legislative requirements that we haven't been meeting, partly because of staffing. We don't really have a lot of choice, and this is not something that's not happening everywhere. I have no idea how people are going to continue to live with all the inflation and all of this and all of the services. But this is the world that we're in, and I don't think we can change it today. And I would just have a question about, I'm trying to follow Director Morrison's logic that this would be adding 600 and something thousand. And so that's one question. But the other question that I had that I originally had was to ask Mr. Crothers or Ms. Mohan or whoever, maybe it's Ms. Weiner probably, What happens with the staffing budget that for existing staff when they leave, and the money that we collect and they leave and they're not collecting it? What happens with that money, and is it shown anywhere in anything we've gotten today?
So those contribute to your annual surplus. Sorry, Madam Chair. That any unspent funds in any function, whether it's from lack of paying staff or cost savings in other areas, just forms part of your surplus. We don't, and you would see the difference in the budget analysis. It showed what the budget was for staffing and what the actual expenditures were. And if we had staffing lags, that number would be lower than the budget. And typically they are. That's where often your surpluses come from, is the fact that we often have vacant positions that we've just not been able to fill.
Yeah, very similar to the RCMP detachment. Thank you, Mr. Crothers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So there is a resolution. If anybody would like to move that. Oh, Director Salmon?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question. So you see the column for COVID funds, 160,000. So I assume those are one time, or they're not continuing. Where do we, if the positions continue, where does that COVID fund 160K? Where are we going to take that funds from?
Through the chair to Director Salmon, that is one source of the difference between the requisition number for 2022 and the embedded cost going forward in 2023. So some of that is, you can see that 160,000 contributes to the difference between the sum at the bottom of the requisition column for this year and the sum at the bottom of the requisition column for next year. So that was sort of what Director Morrison was pointing out, that even though we're funded from some other sources this year for these staffing increases, next year those funding sources won't be there, and therefore the costs will be greater.
Okay, so out of requisition. So just to confirm, and I think I'm right on what Natalie said to me earlier, but given all that, still we're at the 5.44 is sort of factoring in the full year-round cost that we'll probably have next year. So we're actually going to be less than 5.44 this year, and then equivalent next year. But to the 5.44, of course, it'll be all different next year, but at the same level. Is that right, Ms. Weiner?
Through the chair to Director Salmon, as you can see, the requisition, the original one was 1.6, and then for 2023, it's about 1.5 for the total requisition amounts. So you're noticing that the amount will be very similar to the same increase, except for the reduction of the $600,000. So requisition would go up back to where you were talking, depending on all the other decisions. I mean, the 5.44 was based on other improved increases, etc.
Okay, yes, great, thank you.
Okay, I have Director Smith and then back to Director Morrison. If I see no other hands, I'll look for the recommendation. Director Smith.
Thank you. I'd like to just go back to Mr. Crothers' point of vacant positions. And I think that over the last 2 years, we've had multiple vacant positions. We still have vacant positions, and this is forcing the staff or creating additional work for the staff to cover the vacant positions. So I'm not really sure when I'm looking at these additions that that's going to actually alleviate what we have is vacant positions. And if we haven't been running at full capacity with the coverage of all those vacant positions, how do we really know where we are needing additional staff? You know, I think once you have your positions covered, then the staff would be that is currently working would have a reduction in their work load because they're picking up additional work in the vacant positions. And so when I look at the other additions here, I'm not really sure that we've actually explored the vacant positions being full, and if this fits into it. It just seems that we have 16 positions here, and that's definitely a lot for our taxpayers to look at increasing. And I'm also wondering, you know, we we don't really see how many additional staff have been hired for over the last 10 years or over the last 5 years to know whether there is a need for the additional HR positions to cover some of those areas. And I'm not sure that we shouldn't be looking for consultants to cover some of the work, GIS staffing. Right now we have a consultant, I believe, working on our MOCP in GIC. And then once the MOCP is done, then will we actually have as high a demand on the GIS staff? So there's still, you know, in the asset management, once you put in the information into the program, should that not alleviate the need for as much staffing? So there's some questions, I'm probably quite a few questions in there. So thank you if someone can respond to
Ms.
some.
Mohan and Mr. Crothers.
Madam Chair, if I can, I'll start and then I'll ask Ms. Mohan to carry on. I can totally understand Director Smith's question around the vacancies. Those vacancies occur sporadically throughout the organization. They're in different departments, they're within different functions of the organization. And granted, when a position is vacant, sometimes staff do have to step in to take over. Often what it means is things just don't get done. That is the implication. So when I'm presenting a staffing plan to you to approve, that's on the basis of all of the positions being filled. We don't have the luxury of moving people around, you know, within different departments, different functions, because we have such specialized work. So on the surface, I can see that kind of question about, you know, if we have all these vacant positions, but again, they happen for different periods of time in different departments. They don't affect the overall productivity. When we bring forward staffing positions, these are functions that are required in the organization for us to be able to maintain a level of service, irrespective of there being positions vacant from time to time within the organization. Director Smith, your last question, sorry, I was going to respond to the use of consultants. So I think as Ms. Mohan has explained in the past when we've talked about our staffing, we always look at consultants. That is always a tool in our toolbox to deliver services. And if we can do that, we will simply recommend that. And often you won't necessarily see those because they're in the budget, and we will hire consultants to come in on special projects, and where we can, we do. When we bring forward a staffing request, it's because we feel that is the most appropriate position and resource to complete what we need to get done. So I can assure you that all of those considerations are thought of by staff when we bring these forward.
I turn to Director Morrison has disappeared. He was next on my list, or has he? I don't not see him. I turn to Director Kuhn, though, who did put up his hand. Go ahead, Director Kuhn. You have a question for staff.
Yes, I'm still kind of battling with this asset management. So the position for Parks and Trails, Regional Parks, Asset Management, Capital Projects, Tech. So this tech is only going to be there for parks. So what I don't understand is we hired an asset manager. Now, does he only do a certain section of the CVID assets, and then we have another one for parks? And so I'm wondering, well, okay, do we then is there another lineup for someone that just looks after sewers? Or I thought the asset manager, when we got into this whole asset management stuff, that what I remember was we have to hire an asset manager. And I mean, I was troubled by that already, but I thought, okay, fine, it's a requirement from senior government, so I understand that. Well, now it seems like it's like a spider web. It's going out, and then we need more, and I fail to understand this. So please explain that.
Mr. Crothers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you recall, we had a presentation from Mr. Tukarik on and Ms. Mohan on the asset management program and the history of that program and what it entails. We do have an asset coordinator, albeit that position is also an energy manager, so it's not an entirely dedicated position to asset management. We have a large organization. We have $363 million in assets that we are required to manage. The asset coordinator position provides organizational support. So that position has been helping to guide the implementation and development of our program, to support the staff in the field that are required to be undertaking various activities associated with asset management. So Director Kuhn is absolutely right. Every department is different. Every department in our organization has different staffing to be able to support asset management. And in the case of engineering, we have staff that are undertaking various roles. In parks, we haven't had that. And given the large number of parks and the significant assets that we've had in parks, Parks has identified that in order for us to be able to adequately manage this program now and into the future, we need that staff resource, because otherwise we're going to be taking staff away from something else in terms of core service to be able to deliver this. So it's not one size fits all. Every department is taking a different approach to implementing asset management. In this case, you've seen Parks come forward to say, we need these resources. In other departments, we've been able to incorporate it into some of the existing resources that we have.
Follow up, Director Kuhn?
Yeah, so can you tell me how much of, let's say, a full-time equivalent money or position does asset management actually take? So we've got the asset manager that, as you explained, has an engineering job as well and does asset management kind of half-time or whatever. So then we get this person, and that is going to be full-time asset management, I imagine. So in other departments, how many asset manager part-time positions are there? And when you bunch it all together, how many positions are those? Because that's what baffles me. I thought, well, if we hire an asset manager, and it's a full-time position and it's a well-paid position, he'll look after the assets. And when you think, I mean, we managed, and maybe we didn't do a good enough job, but we managed without asset managers for what, 25, 30, 40 years? And we already had the assets. So now we have a full-time asset manager, then we have more asset manager here, more asset, and it kind of, I keep thinking, well, so did we have that much air in the system that now has to be filled, or I just don't understand it. As I said earlier, I have a need to somehow understand, okay, how many full-time positions does the CBRD need in order to function properly? And how many do we have now? Is there a requirement? But we keep expanding, and it bothers me that yes, you have good explanations. I do understand that, but
I understand Director Kuhn's concerns, and you know, all I can tell you is that yes, we have had assets for the entirety of our time at the CBRD. Those assets have been grown considerably over the years in terms of added infrastructure, recreation centers, parks. Have we been doing an adequate job? I would argue no. And that's exactly why the province has mandated local governments to establish asset management programs, because we as a local government have been behind the times for decades. Different directors on this board have acknowledged the fact that in the private sector, the asset management is part of, and their systems, they're not just intuitive, yes, we do it. Asset management systems are systems, and they require support, and they require resources in order to implement. So I would argue that no, we haven't been doing an adequate job of managing our assets. We have not been doing an adequate job of understanding what we have, what condition it's in, and what does it need to do to serve the public. And we haven't done an adequate job of long-term planning in terms of our financial requirements for repair and replacement of our assets. So this is a comprehensive program to manage our $363 million in assets that we manage on behalf of the public, those people that use those assets and pay for those assets. And unfortunately, yes, it does take resources. And to implement a system like we're implementing is going to have long-term benefits for this board and long-term benefits for the CVRD, because we will be much more proactive. We will be ensuring that our assets are managed properly and timely and hopefully cost effectively moving forward. It is a tough pill. I understand the director's concerns about the staffing required. We're not alone in this. Every other local government is struggling with this issue and trying to get local government in general to a level that we should have been at 20 years ago in terms of managing these assets. And that's all I can say. I mean, if we could do it with less people, we certainly would. This is the nature of managing large infrastructure over the long term. You need resources, you need systems to do it effectively.
Mr. Farquhar, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarity on the specific position for Parks and Trails, it's just not asset management. This position is also supporting a multi-million-dollar capital program that the CVRD Parks and Trails Division delivers every year for community and regional parks. And as noted in the supplemental, this position is a field position. It's going to be out there working with contractors, overseeing everything from building of trails to new playgrounds going in, under the direction of our capital projects coordinator. So the asset management is an important component of this position, but it's not the sole focus of the position. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Mohan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also like to point out that in my report, there were 4 supplemental staffing positions which are specifically associated with other supplementals in the budget, and this is one of them. So this position is directly related to the addition of supplemental parks capital works that have been added as supplementals to this budget.
Follow up, Director Kuhn.
Yeah, just an idea. I mean, with parks, we have parks commissions. And the parks commissions, yes, they are not specialized. I realize that, but they do help in finding, let's say, requirements for parks or whatever is going wrong. My parks commission does that. So I would have thought that would be providing some help and rather than having a full-time position there. Yeah, anyway, that's just a comment.
Okay, I see Director Morrison is back. I turn back to him. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I had to take a call. This is in regards to our solid waste complex, and we've got a number of positions here, and I'm thrilled that we're making better use of that, and we're doing the security and the likes. And more of a general question, I don't know if this is to Mr. Carruthers or Mr. Boyson, but given we're having to do a lot of work in that area, and it's providing a lot of services for us, are we any closer to determining a plan for a greater use and efficiency of the lands that aren't currently occupied at that site? Because I'm not saying we should be going into business and trying to generate revenue, but I think that there's opportunities for us to have cost savings across the organization if we could better utilize that. I know it's not specific to this, but we're putting a lot of new bodies in at Biggs Creek. Where are we at on maximizing the benefits of having that property?
Mr. Boyson?
Well, if I can, Mr. Chair, and I'll let Mr. Boyson deal with the specifics. That for the last number of years, we have been looking at Biggs Creek in terms of the role it will play, not only to support our operations and our administration, but essentially, if there are opportunities as an opportunity to generate revenue, given that there is a fairly large land base there. In order for us to move forward, we really need to understand what our immediate needs are, both in terms of, because those lands are owned by solid waste. That property was purchased as a solid waste facility. And as we move through, and Mr. Boyson can speak to the work that he's doing in terms of looking at our operations center, using that land more efficiently and more effectively. Once that work's done and we have a better idea of what our needs are there and how that could be potentially developed, there may be an opportunity to look at secondary benefits to the land. But we can't go down that road until we understand what our immediate needs are. And Mark has been assigned to work on that, and I would ask Mr. Boyson to speak to that.
Mr. Boyson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, I'll share that within my new role now, and with the reorg that Mr. Carruthers has been rolling out, is now overseeing an operations group we're transitioning into that over the coming months here. We have a lot of different ideas about what these lands could be, important opportunities, I think, here for us to consider. So we're very much thinking about how these lands can benefit the organization. There is some opportunities there. There's some services needed out there that could be improved upon. There's also some significant discussions coming forward about how recycling and waste management functions for this year. That will be coming to the board soon as well, with some workshop discussions about 3 streams and how does composting services work in the future as well. So we have those types of discussions primarily as a solid waste facility. But at the same time, as part of operations as a whole, I think there's lots of opportunity for us to consider that. And I think this year, I want to be spending time with the staff to figure out where those opportunities lie and bring some things to the board for us to consider for the coming years, because there's some big long-term potential there for us to benefit the residents and the community.
Thank you. I see that Ms. Toteric has come on. I try to get names right with a name like mine. Welcome. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Director Morrison. Thank you for your question. It is actually one of the strategies in the solid waste management plan to do a master plan for Bings Creek. We have to look at, yes, the property, which is one of the only light industrial properties that we have in the CVRD that's ready for development, which is a really nice asset that the CVRD has, actually. And as a regional service provider, we have to always ensure that we're considering the long-term projections for our population growth. So, we would obviously be collaborating with the municipalities as well in terms of what that potential growth might be in terms of capacity and needs for that growth. As we do not have alternative disposal options on this island, we are very much aware of what that property can provide us. So that was why one of the initiatives under that solid waste management plan was to actually do a master plan. So that process is starting with Mark now, and we are working towards that. So definitely a high priority, but it also a very big exercise, and obviously an important need for this community.
Thank you. Follow up, Director Morrison.
Thank you. And I'm glad to hear the work is underway. And, we have very few opportunities for, bringing efficiencies to the organization. And that is a real asset that we have. And I would just hope that staff might flag that one particular issue as a potential topic of discussion for the next board's strategic planning. I think that if we're going to invest anywhere in this region, that would be an area that I'd be interested in targeting and putting a little bit of resources to, given our capacity restraints today. Thank you.
Thank you. I turn to Director Wilson, then Director Marsh. Director Wilson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps I can help Director Kuhn out here in the committee of the whole. As far as staff and asset management, the notes that I have here is reference to increasing levels of asset management work and resource intensive. So there's going to be more of this coming forward. Madam Chair, the other note I've got here from a previous meeting was reference to ever-growing Parks Department or ever-expanding Parks Department. Maybe it's time to start stopping that ever-expanding thing. It's like the Big Bang Theory. It just keeps on going and going. So maybe it's time to put a moratorium on something like that, stop the expansions. We've got huge amounts of stuff that we need to get onto. And one of the questions I have when we get to actually voting on these supplementary requests for staff, will we be taking that one at a time and voting on them, or will we be taking them as
one at a time? It will be one at a time. And so I turn now to Director Marsh.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. I was just thinking about what someone, I think it was Mr. Carruthers said, or maybe it was a director, about over the last 25, 30, 40 years, how assets have accumulated. And it just twigged to me that that probably also includes the failed sewer systems in the areas that were supposed to be kept up by the developer, but were basically walked away from, and then the regional district had to take up. Is that part of it, Mr. Carruthers?
I mean, we've taken on a number of systems, whether they be water systems, sewer systems, that all contributes to it. I mean, I'm not going to earmark those as a significant contributor. It just, it contributes to our overall asset picture when we take those assets on, and there are more to take on. The board's well aware that there's going to be increased need in the future for the CVRD to play a role in some of these services in the community.
Yeah, my point was just to gently point out that had local government been required or taken it on sooner, we might not have had those kinds of things happen as frequently. And then I would just, my thought, it's a little different than Director Wilson's, around parks, because we also have to look at our having natural assets and taking advantage of the ecosystem protection that they provide. You know, like, we have to have a place for water capture and storm water capture, and we have to have a place for biodiversity. So to me, those are assets, and they do need managing. And I think all of us can really just think back to the atmospheric river. I don't know exactly how many parks all across this whole valley were affected, but the ones that I saw in my area, I mean, that's a huge thing. And I would hope that we could, after we get the budget passed, maybe do some writing to the provincial government, or maybe a UBCM resolution if we're not too late, to ask them, when they give us these emergency monies to repair these assets, that they actually allow us to give us enough money to repair them to the level that they're not just going to go back down unless we have the extra money, because otherwise we're leaving that to future boards to decide, are we going to rebuild to the level that we just, had to apply to be fixed, or are we going to go up to what we're facing now in the climate? So I guess I'll just end by saying I agree with Mr. Carruthers. It's increasingly complex everywhere humans live, and yeah, I'm done. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I do appreciate the staff's asset management presentation that we had was very detailed, and I appreciated that as well. So we did get a lot of that information given to us on this. And I turn to Director Acton and then back to Director Kuhn, and hopefully we can have some type of resolution soon. Director Acton.
That's what I was hoping for, Madam Chair, that we could go through the list of staff positions, because none of this information is new, and I appreciate that everyone has a bit of a different take on it, but we have actually seen most of these at the board level, or at committee level, and I think we're going around in circles a little bit, so I would respectfully ask that we start to go through the list.
So are you moving the resolution that's currently in front of us?
Sure, thank you.
Staffing supplemental submitted for 2022 budget be approved?
Yes, please.
It's been moved and then seconded, and I turn to Director Kuhn.
I thought we were going to go item by item.
We're going back to that.
Okay, so
I just want to make a comment.
Just a second, Director Stone, go ahead.
Well, yeah, we just committed to doing them one by one, and this motion would approve all of those supplementals, so I'm not sure where we're going. But
Okay,
I'm ready to go through them one by one once we get back to the list.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure where we're going either, but we've got this recommendation in front of us currently. Go ahead, Director Kuhn.
Can pull it. I could pull that.
That's good.
Let's pull it and start with number one, please.
Okay, Director Kuhn.
Number one.
Yeah, I just have one comment. There's a request for 2 positions for parks. one is a tier 1 and the other one is a tier 2. So I'm willing to take one position, vote in favor of one, and that'll be the tier 1, which will be part asset manager. And I will not be in favor of voting for the second position.
Okay, so Director Stone, now that we've had the discussion on this, we go back to your reports and go one by one.
Yeah, and just to be fair to Ms. Legault, from a process standpoint, I believe that motion was moved and seconded. The one under S8, staff report 8, it would be appropriate for the board to defeat that, and then we can bring back the tabled motion. I don't know, Ms. Legault, for advice there.
Where is Ms. Legault? Okay, is that?
That would be the proper.
Okay.
Sorry,
So
that would be the proper. That would be the proper parliamentary procedure. However, if there's consensus of the board to withdraw it and just move on.
Yeah, can we just withdraw it and move on and go back to Director Stone? I'm seeing heads nodding. Are we okay with that? Okay, Director Stone.
So I think then we need a motion to bring the tabled motion, which was, we're under CR4, number 6.2, I believe was the tabled motion, Ms. Legault.
I believe it was CR5.
Oh.
But 6.2 is.
Yeah, sorry, CR562. So I'd move that that motion be brought off the table and back for consideration.
Moved in second, all in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Go ahead.
Okay, so then we're talking about supplemental request for Function 100 General Government GIS staffing be approved. And I'll move that item.
And moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
Moving on to 6.3, supplemental request for Function 100 General Government HR Admin Payroll Support 0.5 FTE be approved. I'll move that item.
Moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried.
6.4, that the supplemental request for Function 100 General Government HR Advisor 1 FTE be approved.
Been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Are you opposed, Director Wilson? One opposed, Director Wilson. Go ahead. And Director Smith.
I see.
Ms. Weiner, go ahead.
To the board, I just wanted to point out, as you're approving this, this is at the full cost amount. You might want to say the updated amount as per the staffing schedule. Otherwise, if you move forward approving at these rates, that's the full annual amount.
Okay, so you're going to say what with each resolution? Director Stone.
Sorry. The spreadsheet we have under this report seems to show the revised amounts that were presented in staff report 8. So I'm just confused because the spreadsheet looks the same.
The spreadsheet attached through the chair to Director Stone, the attachment to the report is, but you've gone back to the actual original agenda, which has the higher amounts, which was approved previously at the committee.
Okay, so it's confusing because what's attached in this staff report is the revised numbers. So how do we do this without having to amend every resolution? Whatever staff feels is the best way to do it, Ms. Legault.
I would suggest that you continue to go through each of these individual staffing supplementals and then introduce a resolution at the end that the supplementals trying to think of some wording off the cuff, but
that the approved supplementals be calculated at the amended amount or something?
Something like that.
So we'll go through. And okay, so which one are we on currently, Director Stone?
Sorry about that. There's a million things going on behind me here. Sorry, what was that?
Where are we?
Your guess is as good as mine. I think we're on CR5,
Yes.
6.
Number 6 on
6.5 now.
Number 5.
Yeah, 6.5. I see a bunch of hands.
Yeah, I'm not sure we are. I thought we were on number 4.
Okay, so we still haven't voted on number 4. Ms. Legault, I see her hand as well.
I have recorded that the motion was carried with Director Wilson and Smith opposed.
Okay, sorry. Yep, 5 it is then.
Okay.
Okay,
Are
go
we all
ahead.
good?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Director Stone. Carry on.
Sorry, I sometimes forget I'm not the chair and I see hands.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
That's fine.
The moving on to number 5 then, 6.5, that the supplemental request for function 100, general government staffing, HR wellness and benefits assistant be approved. And
That's
I move
been
that.
moved. Is there a seconder? Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Directors Smith, Morrison, Kuhn, and Wilson opposed. Motion's carried. Carry on.
So we're on 6.6 now, that the supplemental request for function 100, general government staffing records analyst be approved.
Been moved. Is there a seconder? And seconded. I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Sure, you didn't ask for any questions.
Well, I waited for hands to go up.
Sorry.
There were a
Hands
couple
up.
of hands. There were
Okay.
a couple of hands.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
After.
Pardon me?
And Director Wilson's waving his hand, so I had to acknowledge that he will be after you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, everyone, to jump in here on this one. I'm just wondering if this is something that we need to expedite. Like, if it was a position that we didn't approve today, would that just mean getting our records in order would just slow down a bit and not cause a huge amount of headache?
We have talked about this in committee, but
maybe a review of that quickly for me.
I'd like to speak to that again. Ms. Mohan?
Through the chair, I'm going to defer to Ms. Legault.
Thank you.
So obviously having extra, through the chair, having extra help sooner is always better, but realistically we need time to prepare a job description and posting and go through the process. So I don't think that it needs to be expedited at this point. I think it can go through the regular budget process.
I don't think that was my question. Sorry, more clarity. If this position wasn't approved, would that just mean that the role that this position takes would just take longer to get our records in what I guess they were being put in storage and recorded and everything?
I understood we had a challenge with all of our records and even where they are, and anyway, who would like to take this?
So I do, through the chair, I do think that this is a risk management piece. It's also a workload piece, and the volume of work that is to be done isn't sustainable with their existing resources, and then that turns into a risk factor. And the more we know about what needs to be done, I feel like the greater the risk is.
Thank you for clarity.
Director Wilson, then Marsh.
I'll pass, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Marsh. Okay. So Director Stone, I guess it was moved and seconded. And yes, and there wasn't. Okay. Oh, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Morrison, Kuhn, and Wilson. Carry on, Director Stone.
So we're on to number 7, that the supplemental request for function 100, general government procurement specialist be approved.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion here? Director Salmon.
Sorry, could I just have a quick couple of lines on what the purpose of this one is?
Procurement specialist.
Through the chair to Director Salmon, this position is one to help with all the procurements. We're going with grants and all the projects that are on this list. we didn't want to have, there's a bottleneck that would occur. So there's only so many procurements that can be done by staff, and we've taken those numbers, and based on the metrics, it would require another position to be able to fulfill all the procurements coming forward.
Okay, thank you.
Let me call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Carry on.
Try to stop my video instead of starting my mic. I think we're on to number 8, that the supplemental request for function 100, general government HR consultant 1 FTE be approved.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded. I don't see any hands up. Oh, yes, I do. Director Salmon.
Thank you. So same question. So this is the 4th HR position. Maybe just a rationale for that, please.
Ms. Mohan.
Through the chair to Director Salmon, so this particular staffing request is one that was added to the budget subsequent to the assumption that all of the non-staffing supplemental requests were approved. So if we look at this list of supplemental staffing, there are, I think we decided 16 positions. So that in itself represents an additional workload on the HR division for which we would need an additional person to accommodate. So it's directly related to the supplementals. And that's why it appears on your list as a rank 2 priority, meaning if the board chose to reduce the number of supplementals overall or not do the hiring, this position would not be needed, or perhaps this position could be term, or this position could be part-time. So it depends on the ultimate total of supplemental staffing that you approve in this process.
Follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
So this is a consultant position, so it's not ongoing?
Through the chair to Director Salmon, no, the job title is the job title that we have internally for a staff HR person. The reason they're called a consultant is because they provide an internal consulting function across the organization to different divisions. And while they are, lately our consultants have almost been doing exclusively recruitment, the idea is that they're a generalist. So they provide all the different human resources support functions internally to the organization.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Morrison, Smith, and Wilson opposed. Motion's carried. Carry on.
Thank you. Moving on, number 9, supplemental request for function 100, general government legislative administrative assistant 0.5 FTE be approved.
That's been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion. Go ahead, Director Acton.
Thank you. So, I guess there's this position that would help legislative services for our election that's coming up, and then we've also earmarked for a consultant. And I thought in the past, staff were the elections officers. So I guess the capacity is an issue here, or maybe just a short explanation would be great.
Ms. Mohan?
Through the chair to Director Acton. So it's confusing, but this is a different 0.5 legislative position than the one previously identified for the election. So the 0.5 temporary election assistant is a term position and specific to election work. This legislative administrative assistant is, again, one of the positions identified to support the work of supplemental requests. So a number of our supplemental requests will require the capital works, et cetera, and some of the different projects that are slated will require support from legislative services. So this is not the election-focused position.
Follow up, please.
Go ahead.
Yes, I realize that, but we have an election position, we have this position, and in previous elections, was it not staff who had the time to actually be the elections officer?
For that answer, I'm going to let Ms. Legault elaborate.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, traditionally, the corporate officer or deputy corporate officer and legislative assistant have taken various roles, chief election officer, deputy, etc. I am very aware that each one of those individuals has a full-time plus job to start with, and to run an election, which is a highly legislated process off the side of your desk, means that other work will suffer or the election work will suffer. It also means that there's a significant amount of overtime that is worked, and it just becomes quite challenging overall to keep all of the work flowing for every other division in the organization.
Okay. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Wilson and Morrison opposed. Carry on. Number 10, Director Stone.
Thanks for keeping my place for me, Madam
I know
Chair.
I'm trying hard myself.
Number 10, that the supplemental request for Function 100, General Government and Active Record Storage be approved, and I'll move that.
Been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. And Director Kuhn and Director Acton. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I guess I'm getting forgetful. Did we approve the records analyst previously, or did we turn that down?
Approved.
Okay, then I'll turn down this one.
And is this another legislative services position, to clarify?
This is
This
just
is a staffing request.
Sorry, I can hear you.
Sorry, through the chair, item 10 is for storage. We discussed it at the time at committee about being a low cost, high value for appropriate storage for records.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Kuhn's opposed. Carry on to number 11.
that the supplemental request for Function 107 Transit Shelter be approved as amended with funding to come from operating reserves.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you.
We're on to number 12, that the supplemental request for Function 109 Emergency 911 Radio Service Vehicle be approved.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
We're on to number 13, that the supplemental request for Function 200 Administration Office Fleet Electric Vehicle Charging Phase 2 be approved.
And moved, seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
We're on to number 14, that the supplemental request for Function 105 Emergency Planning Couch and Emergency Management Organization be approved.
Been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. It's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Morrison's opposed and Director Smith is opposed. Motion's carried. Carry on.
Number 15, that the supplemental request for Function 515 Curbside Electric, I'm just getting excited about electric vehicles. The 515 Curbside Garbage and Recycling, Curbside Recycling and Waste Trucks be approved, and no, they're not electric.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Oh, just a second. I had a question. Go ahead, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Could you just refresh my memory on this one, please? Whoever can answer that one.
Mr. Boyson, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'll ask Mr. Stevens to answer this question. Thank you.
Madam
I think you need to move your headset down, Doug.
My apologies.
There you go.
Through you,
Welcome.
thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The current curbside trucks are beyond their useful life capacity. We are currently collecting with all three trucks throughout the regular week. The trucks are requiring extensive repairs on them, amounting to between $70,000 and $80,000 annually for these trucks to keep them on the road, and they're just well beyond their reasonable capacity or useful life cycle.
Thank you for reminding us of that report that you had given to us previously.
Yeah, can I just have a follow-up, please?
Sure,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Mr. Stevens, can you tell me how old they are?
The trucks were purchased in 2014, so they're currently 7 years old, 8 years old, going on 8.
Yeah,
And
so they must have a fairly high mileage on them as well, right?
they have approximately 250, 300,000 kilometers on them, but they do have several hours on them. And being that the type of truck that they are, they're starting and stopping throughout the day. They're not your regular highway truck that you typically get 800,000 kilometers out of.
Thank you.
Okay, now go ahead, Director Morrison. You have a question for Mr. Stevens?
Yeah, thank you. And sadly, I'm seeing them roadside being repaired on a fairly regular basis, and I think staff have already put the dollars aside for this. But are these not? Were these vehicles not exposed to the biodiesel issue that we were having earlier, and that's part of perhaps why they're due to be replaced now?
Mr. Stevens?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Director. Yes, one of the trucks had been used extensively with the biofuel, and as a matter of fact, that engine was actually replaced in 2020. We can't say exactly as a result of that, but it did have a lot of damage to the engine. So,
follow up, Director Morrison, and then Director Salmon.
Yeah,
Follow
just real quickly, are we going to, I think we have 2 of these vehicles. Are we going to be keeping one in reserve after the new ones arrive?
thank you, Director. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, the intent is to actually keep the 3 vehicles. 2 of them would be kept on the road. 1 of them would be used for parts until such time as we hopefully expand the program and eventually purchase more trucks to replace them.
Great, and I believe that was in the presentation too. Director Salmon.
Thank you. So I see it looks like about $800,000 coming out of capital reserve to pay for these. There's a question. So are we set up as 8 years about the anticipated replacement cycle that we planned for? Is that what we're working at?
Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Director. Yes, the life cycles on these trucks are between 7 and 8 years. 8 years is the max. We're beyond that 8 years now, and they're suffering terribly.
Okay, so in 8 years from now, we'll have another X correct amount in the capital reserve to.
Correct, and hopefully we'll be at the 7-year mark so that the trucks aren't suffering and we're having service troubles or issues.
Thank you.
All right, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you.
I think that takes us to number 16.
Correct.
That the supplemental request for function 515, curbside garbage and recycling, summer students be approved.
That's been moved. Seconded. Any questions on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you. Number 17.
That the supplemental request for function 520, solid waste management complex refresh condition-based assessments be approved.
Been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion here? Seeing no hands up, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you.
And number 18, that the supplemental request for function 520, solid waste management complex Bings Creek pickup truck be approved.
That's been moved. Is there a seconder?
Can't second my own motion, I guess.
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you.
I think we're on to number 19, the supplemental request for Function 520 Solid Waste Management Complex Bings Creek Genset Electrical Design be approved.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Director Staples. Any discussion here? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
We're on to number 20, that the supplemental request for Function 520 Solid Waste Management Complex Bings Creek Excavator Replacement be approved.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
21, that the supplemental request for Function 520 Solid Waste Management Complex Bings Creek Maintenance Millwright be approved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
22, that the supplemental request for Function 540 Liquid Waste Management Plan South Sector Sewer System Design be approved.
Been moved. Is there a seconder? From the south end, maybe? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 23, that the supplemental request for Function 280 Regional Parks CVT Waters Roads Bridge Number 1 be approved.
That's been moved. And seconded. Seeing no other hands up, no questions, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
24, that the supplemental request for Function 283 Kinsel Trestle Rehabilitation Works be approved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 25, that the portion of the supplemental request for Function 279-280 Bings Creek Operations Center Security related to Function 280 be approved.
Moved, second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried.
Number 26, that the portion of the supplemental request for Function 279-280 Asset Management Capital Projects Tech related to Function 280 be approved.
It's been moved. Second. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Wilson opposed. Motion carried.
And number 27, that the portion of the supplemental request for Function 279-280 Parks Operations Technician related to Function 280 be approved.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Opposed, Director Wilson and Director Kuhn. Motion's carried. And now, thank you, but do we now, is this the time where we also make that resolution? Go ahead,
Yes.
Director Stone.
I would move that the staff positions approved under this section be approved with the amended amounts presented by staff in Staff Report 8.
It's been moved. Is there seconded by Director Morrison? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. We move on to number 7.
Number 7.1, that the supplemental request for Function 280 CVT Lake Cowichan Section washout repairs be approved. And number 2, that the supplemental request for Function 280 CVT Bings Creek washout repair be approved.
Has that been, I don't see, that's been seconded. Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Number 8.
That consideration of item R8 2022 draft budget for Function 464 Shawnigan Lake Community Center be postponed pending review by committee community advisory members. Before I move that, Chair, has that been resolved yet, Director Acton?
I think it's later in our report, is it not, to approve?
Yeah, so Ms. Legault, would it just make sense to not move that motion at all?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So then moving on to number 9, that the senior management team be probably don't need to do that either because that was SR8. So that concludes my report, Director or Chair Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you very much. You get a hand for that.
I got extra espresso in this coffee.
There, okay. Did a great job. Thank you so much. And with that, we'll take it.
Well, they're recorded, so you could go back and watch them all. You could have binge
You know,
watch.
it's funny you mentioned that. That's my next series. I'm going to start binging.
I could have to take up
That'll be
some
your evening
recreational
entertainment or what?
things.
Yeah, and I'm going to knit my
Oh,
dog's
time out, time
afghan
out,
while I
time
watch
out.
y'all.
Time out, time out.
Video's live.
Welcome back, everyone. And we are currently on staff report number 1. So go ahead, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Madam Chair. SR1 is the staff report from Facilities and Transit regarding the 2022 draft budget for transit functions 106 and 107. And the proposed recommendation is 1, that the 2022 draft budget for function 106 commuter transit be amended as follows. A, decrease requisition by $20,386, and B, increase transfer from operating reserves by $20,386. And 2, that the 2022 draft budget for function 107 transit be amended as follows. A, decrease the requisition by $260,085, increase transfer from operating reserve by $232,085, increase fare box revenue by $8,000, increase tickets and day pass revenue by $10,000, increase monthly pass revenue by $2,000, and increase handy dart revenue by $8,000.
Okay, thank you. Are you moving that, Director Stone? It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Wakeham is here. Any questions for Mr. Wakeham? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Thank you, Mr. Wakeham. Moving on now. Staff report 2.
Thank you. Item SR2, the resolution was dealt with earlier in the meeting, but the report is here for your information.
Thank you.
And if there's...
We'll go to SR3.
Item SR3 is a staff report from South Cowichan Recreation Division on the 2022 draft budget review for function 464 Shawnigan Lake Community Centre, and there's 5 recommendations published on the agenda.
Has it been moved by Director Acton and seconded by Director Stone? Any discussion? Director Smith, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Because the Shawnigan Lake Community Center is one of the regional recreation facilities for going towards the regional recreation referendum. I just was wondering, the Elsie Miles, is it under the Shawnigan Lake Community Center as one of those facilities, as part of the regional recreation facilities? If Mr. Ben, maybe, thank you, Mr. Elzinga.
Actually, we have Ms. Little here too.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, either one. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Elzinga.
Madam Chair, through to Director Smith. So yes, the Elsie Miles is integral to the Shawnigan Lake Community Center. Its function around potentially childcare more than anything else would be included in the regional recreation function, should that function be successful in referendum this October.
Follow up, Director Smith, go ahead, please.
So excuse me, is it a separate building from, I'm not familiar with, I've seen the Shawnigan Lake Community Center, but I was thinking the Elsie Miles is a separate building.
Mr. Elzinga, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Director Smith, and for any details, I'd certainly turn to Ms. Little, but yes, it is a separate building on the same campus, basically. So they're, again, integral services, 2 separate buildings there at Shawnigan Lake.
Follow up, Director Smith.
I'll follow up when we get to regional recreation sometime. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so that has been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you so much. Moving on to staff report number 4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A staff report from Water Management Division on amendments to budgets for functions 620 and 810, Missachi Lake Water and Sewer, capital expenditure, reservoir completion, community works funding, and the recommendation is printed in the agenda.
Been moved by Director Morrison. Is there a seconder? I don't see a seconder. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Alternate Director Sandu. Go ahead, Director Morrison. Did you want to speak to this, or we've already spoken to it a few times today? Okay. Self-explanatory. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, maybe we could pull the one that's on the table and deal with it now from earlier.
Number 13 from Electoral Area Services.
Yep. Same item.
Can you, do you have it in front of you? Can you read the recommendation?
Sure.
And what was the question? What did we want to know?
It was whether or not there was going to be any additional gas tax required, and on the basis of that and what I've heard from staff, we should be all right. So,
okay.
No.
I have it here if you like.
Okay, go ahead, Director Salmon.
That the supplemental request for function 620 water reservoir replacement be approved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Okay, and we now go to SR5.
Madam Chair, SR5 is a staff report from the Finance Division with a 2022 draft budget overview for information.
Okay, who will be taking this? Anybody want to? Ms. Bowen, has anybody got any questions? That is for information. Are we information overloaded today? Not one hand is up. Okay, moving on to SR6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item SR6 is a staff report from Finance with a summary of budget approvals, again for information.
Director Salmon, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. So just looking at the attachment A to this report, I noticed so that there's a total at the very end, the requisition of 1.4 million, which is different than the 2.3 million that we've been talking about. So I'm just wondering for staff, what's the explanation for that?
Ms. Bowen?
Through the chair to Director Salmon, I'd have to look at that. Just give me a bit of time to figure out why the difference is there.
Okay. I have a second question. Maybe I don't know if that'll confuse.
Give it a whirl. Is it for another staff member?
Yeah, maybe it's for Ms. Weiner, but just okay. Generally, same attachment, total, let's see, from operating reserve, 2.7 million. We've talked a lot about requisition, but how much, so we're spending 2.7 million out of operating reserve. Is that within the norm? The norm is how's that compared to previous years?
Ms. Weiner?
Through the chair to Director Salmon, offhand, I don't know specifically, but I do know there has been some extra additions that went into operating reserves, because I know general government was putting in 400,000 that was going in to offset the operating budget, which has not been done in the past. So there was some larger amounts that have happened through there.
Okay.
Thank you. Not seeing any other hands up. We can just wait for Ms. Bowen. How many people watching now, Director Salmon?
Well, very, very attentive people.
Prime Gov just threw me out and I'm back in again now. Are we on SR5 or SR6 here?
SR5.
Okay, thank you.
Or are we on or we are on SR6, sorry.
SR6, yeah, SR6.
Sorry, yeah.
We're looking at attachment A, SR6. The totals there are quite interesting at the very end, if anyone has that in front of them.
Yeah, that's the one I was looking for before it refused to tell me what was on there. Thank you.
Can we move to SR7?
I'm happy to wait if we want to come back.
Will that be a problem for anyone if we move to the public consultation, the information collected? Ms. Legault, is that a problem with moving on to R7 while we wait?
Oh, sorry, not from my perspective. I just saw Ms. Weiner come up, so I wasn't sure if she was going to say something.
Oh, okay. Okay. Ms. Weiner, go ahead.
I was just popping on because Ms. Bowen's out calculating, and the next report is the information and feedback, so I was just popping on screen for that report.
So we could go ahead with number staff report 7, Ms. Legault, and we'll come back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item SR7, staff report from finance on information collected at the public consultation meetings. And that report has been uploaded to the agenda management system, and you have it in front of you.
Any questions on that?
That was just recently uploaded, was it? I don't see it.
Through the chair this morning, so you may need to refresh, but
okay.
We did get it. Did we not get it on email or an extra? There was different. Yeah, we did get an email as well.
All right. Okay.
Any questions on that? That was just for information. Seeing no other questions, and we'll wait to go back to staff report 6. Director Stone.
Just while we're waiting, I just had a question for Ms. Weiner and staff. Is the schedule, when will the Schedule E be updated from today's meetings? I don't expect that it will have changed, but if it needs to, do you know when that'll be available?
Through the chair to Director Stone, typically it's not updated until we've received the revised roll. The budget gets adopted, the revised roll comes, and that's the final numbers that come through. So typically that's when it's been done.
Can we just ask that an email go out to the board when that's updated? That'll be in March though, right? End of March?
Yeah, the revised roll doesn't come in till the very last day of March, usually the beginning of April. By April 11th is when it has to be sent off to the municipalities. So before April 11th, it'll definitely be done.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Morrison.
So that's the final number goes to the tax collection, but the numbers that as a result of today, like I think I heard you say, Ms. Bowen's frantically calculating, when will we get that sheet for us to review?
The schedule to, which was the attachment A, she's working on, but I can, but there seems to be a bit of a computer glitch with getting the worksheet not opening up. I can update the board though, based on the decisions with the staffing, the changes with that, I've just been given that information. and the change in requisition has gone down to 4.73 from the 5.44 at the beginning of the day.
I think we can take a 5-minute. Well, how long do you think Ms. Weiner, like a 10-minute break, so that we're not, or 5 minutes, or?
Finance can send an email out with the adjusted information and the revised attachment or information on it if you would prefer. Decisions have been made and are what they are at this point in time, and what would be on that spreadsheet is based on old information at the beginning of the day. So we could probably look at it, update it for the information based on the decisions today, and then send that revised schedule out. Would that be? I think it would be more beneficial than sending out the old one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Is that good with everyone? And we do have the number, the 4.73. All right. So, Ms. Legault, if we can go down to whatever's next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe we've concluded all of the business items. So question period, I have no participants.
Okay. So, Director Stone?
I just want to clarify, that means there will be no meeting tomorrow?
Correct. I see a lot of cheering. All righty. And it's 2:43. Go ahead, Director Marsh.
Can I just thank you very much, Madam Chair, for keeping us on track, and all of my colleagues, and most particularly Mayor Stone and Angie for keeping us going.
We were on fire.
Well done.
So motion. Oh, and yeah. All righty. Okay, so a motion to adjourn. Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Yay. Thank you so much, everyone. 2:44.
Enjoy the afternoon.
You too. Sunshine.